Okay, keep
I won't
going.
repeat myself. Okay, we'll just start from there. Okay, so making caring common, this holistic approach to evaluating students. And why was that so pivotal and so important? Because colleges didn't represent the country, okay? Colleges represented a small slice of the country, but didn't represent the country, nor did colleges represent the world, essentially, Europe, Asia, South America. Colleges weren't reflective of reality of existence. And so these colleges said, enough, we'll deal with the grades and the scores part, and they're important, and yes, and we'll talk about that later. However, we need to start looking at the whole human being. What will this person bring to the table? And last week we did a seminar for rising seniors, so their situation is a little bit different. And one of our panelists was a past admissions rep from Princeton, and he brought up something which I thought was really interesting. He said, when they sit around the table and they present the student, the question is, what's the add? What will this person add to the campus, to the classroom, to the community, to the world when that person graduates? So they use this term, the add. And so if the add is a 1600 SAT and a 4.9 GPA, is that enough to warrant admission into Princeton at the time? Okay, so that's a term that I want you all to hold on in your heads. Just kind of, what do you add? We're going to get to how do you add? What does that actually mean? And when we look at college admissions, when we look at, well, what are colleges attempting to accomplish? I want you to think of a bicycle wheel, okay? And I want you to think that a bicycle wheel has a million spokes, right, that connect all the way around. And if all the spokes are there, the bike is stable and firm and drives a straight line, and it meets its mission. But if we start removing some of those spokes, it gets wobbly and it crashes. And so if you think of that in terms of how we create a college class, when all the pieces are in place in a college class, the school functions and meets its mission, okay? And so the question becomes then, is that enough just to be able to fill a spot? And Perry's going to talk about now, unfortunately, it's not enough, because very much about college admissions is also a numbers game. So we're going to run past you some of the numbers, and then we'll go back to the different pieces and how you can maximize who you are as an applicant. Okay, so Perry, take it away.
Hi guys, so my name is Perry Kalmus and I'm a co-founder of AKALA, as Barbara said. So yeah, to take you through a little bit of the numbers so you have an understanding of just how crazy the college admissions game has gotten. I'm going to mention 3 schools for you. One is out here in Los Angeles called USC. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. This is a top 25 school. 30 years ago, 1991, USC's acceptance rate was 75%. Okay, you pretty much applied and got in. Now, today, USC is at 11%. And it might be even lower this year. We'll see what their numbers come out. Another good one is Northeastern up in Boston. This is an amazing school. In 1991, it had a 97% acceptance rate. That's even more if you applied, you got in. Today, that's going to be down below 16% this year. And then the last one I'll tell you is for Penn, because this is an Ivy League school. Most people, if you had to guess, what the percentage acceptance rate was in the early 90s, most people think it's like 10, 20%. Well, it was 50%. You had a 50-50 shot of getting into an Ivy League in the early 90s at UPenn. Today, it's at 7%. And so these numbers get pretty crazy. And I'll leave you with one last sort of crazy story. We were speaking with the Yale admissions office a couple of years ago, and they had around 35,000 applicants. And in this day and age, in the old days, people would apply to Ivy Leagues just sort of see if I can get in. That doesn't really happen anymore. You pretty much know that you need to have the profile to get in. And so most of those kids have the profile. Well, Yale worked day and night for 3 months, and they got it down to the 8,700 kids who Yale felt should be accepted to Yale, not who we felt, not who your high school counselor feels. Yale actually wanted to accept these kids. But the problem was they can only say yes to 2,000. So 6,700 Yale approved kids had to sadly not be accepted into Yale. So this is sort of what you're up against when you're applying to these colleges. And for us, it becomes about how can you enhance your profile such that you give them as little reason as possible to say no, right? Because they are looking for reasons. So that's a little bit of the numbers, and then I'll pass it back to Barbara.
Yeah. So I want to take those numbers for Penn. Oh, Perry, can you do that? You have them written down because we want to bring reality. So first we want to totally depress you, and then we're going to totally bring hope. Okay. So, the old, you start with a positive, you hit them with a bad, and you come back strong on the good stuff, right? So, Perry, can you go over those Penn numbers that you and I were talking about?
Yeah, actually, if we could take a quick second in the chat here, we were trying to figure out the polling thing earlier and it wasn't working. But if you got a second, Penn is going to accept next year, right? They're going to accept roughly 3,500 kids. And then obviously only a select few of those will actually accept that acceptance, but they're going to aim to accept 3,500 kids. Can you throw in the chat? We'll give you.
Hey, Perry, I can do the poll question actually.
Oh, you can? Yeah. We'll do the poll. So I want you guys to think through how many spots are you competing for when you're applying? How many spots are you competing for? And then you can put that in the poll if Barbara has it. If not, you could throw it in the chat if you want to guess how many spots you're competing for.
Save. Okay, guys, if I figure this out, this will be amazing. Save. Oh, what am I supposed to do next?
Okay, throw it in the chat. Don't worry about it.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Let's see some guesses in the chat for, there's 3,400 yeses that they're going to give out. How many are you competing for?
If anybody's looking for a job, send me a resume.
I see 1,000. I see 2,500, 1,500, 1,800, 5,000. 1.
That person's close.
Very pessimistic. 50, 1,500, 2,000. So, guys, it's important to understand when these schools, as Barbara said, they're trying to build these well-rounded classes. And I always like to tell people about, when you think about college, everywhere around the world, it's pretty much what's your grade, what's your test score. But, and therefore, a lot of schools around the world are selling pathways, right? So you're going to go to school to be a doctor, a lawyer, a banker. In America, we really sell experiences, right? You could go watch the football team, or you could go watch a symphony play, or you could go to the a school musical, whatever the case may be, and there's endless options. But if you're going to offer those endless options, you then need kids that fill those roles, right? So still a lot of numbers here. Believe it or not, the low guesses were relatively close. But when you have 3,400 spots, first of all, it's male, female, right? So we're going to roughly cut it to 1,700. Right, so now you're competing for 1,700 spots, and then you have to have Penn has about 200 per gender, right? Like for male and female, about 275 international students, and then another 275 first-generation students, and then 150 athletes, and then they're going to have about 300-ish. Legacy people, right? And as you see, it starts climbing down. You're at 800, you're at 600, right? And then we need geographic diversity and we need ethnic diversity. So we need African American, Hispanic, Native American, you name it, whatever the ethnic diversity is. And then we need it across 50 different states. Schools love to brag. We're represented in, we have students here from 48 out of 50 states or whatever the case may be. And so by the time you get down to it, out of those 3,400, you're competing for maybe 100 or 200 spots, right? Because also don't forget we need musicians and you know, if you don't have something that they really need to fill those roles, right? Whether that's a musician or an artist or an athlete or whatever the case may be, then you're down to a couple hundred spots. And so it becomes even more important that we find ways to enhance your profiles so that you hit on all the marks so that a school just can't say no to you. Go ahead, Bart.
Okay, and so a lot of questions came in about what activities should I do or what should I do to make it look good for college? And I want to change your way of thinking because what the colleges are looking for, it sounds like a hackneyed term, and I know that, and people say, oh, God, if I hear that one more time. They're looking for authenticity, okay? They want authentic. And college admissions people, when they're reading through applications, they can see through it all. They want you to show a story that tells them about you that makes sense, okay? And so, you know, if you say that, I'll do super simple examples. If you say that you are interested in pre-med and that your life dream is to become a doctor, but you never went and became an EMS, you never joined the med forum if your school has med forum, you never shadowed doctors in a hospital, you never took advanced classes in sciences, it's not a story that makes sense to them, even if you write this incredibly compelling essay about how much you love the world of medicine. We had a student in China last year who was very proud that she was in the debate school. And we said, why are you in the debate school? Are you interested in law? Are you interested in teaching, like that you would need to have these kinds of skills? She goes, no, I'm an artist and a musician. And I said, well, why are you doing debate school? She said, because I heard it looks really good on an application. So first things first, forget what looks good on an application. Schools want to see authenticity, first and foremost, before anything else. Who is this real person? And if you're real, the story will come through and you will sound authentic. So what we want to do is to go, by the way, if you have any questions as we're talking, then just please, pop them in the box here. So we'll get to the very specifics of these categories that you asked questions about. If you all printed out the form that I sent, if you didn't, I'm going to share my screen with you. Share, hold on a sec. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so you can all see my screen, right? So if you weren't able to print this out, you can get it from my screen. And so we want you to look at this as a pie. And we want you to look at this as you're preparing, whether it's a year from now, 2, 3, or 4, to go to college. And the goal is to reach 7s on all these categories, okay? So I want you to take, we're gonna give you, we're gonna time it for 2 minutes because we want your parents to do this with you if you're on with your parents. If you're not on with your parents, you can kind of guess what you think your parents would fill in for you here. And I want you to circle, where do you think you are now in terms of, okay? Now, if you're young and you haven't done anything on standardized testing, then put it down at a 1, okay? And then you're gonna hear what we're gonna do with these numbers. Have you taken advantage every summer of amazing summer opportunities? Give yourself a 7, okay? So I want you to look at this chart. If you have it in front of you, you can circle your stuff. And I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, how your parents would view you, how you'd view yourself, and then if your parents are there, they can do it as well, okay? Where you feel you are today, if you were filling out that application today, in these areas, because these are the areas that fall into this holistic review of a student, okay? I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. And you may go, or you may start. And if you're a parent and your student is not with you, you can score it for your own student. Be kind. No, just kidding.
Zoom the screen bit further. It's too small font. Is it possible?
Is that bigger?
Yeah, this is a little better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure why something's getting written on that page. That's so weird. I don't know what I did.
Hit the green button on the top left. The red, the yellow, the green.
Me?
Yeah, right there. A little to the left.
Where?
That green button right there at the top left.
That one?
Yeah.
No, I made it smaller.
Oh, okay.
Well, now I can't make it bigger. Thanks, Perry. Well, so much for the big font. Oh, there we go. We could just do it that way. Oh, okay. That was 2 minutes. Okay. So hopefully you all answered this somewhat honestly. So let's pull it apart. So I guess, first of all, in the chat, if you can kind of just write a couple of summaries of what were your strongest areas, okay? Or what were your weakest areas. We can kind of get a little idea of where some of you stand on that. For those of you who don't have this printed out, I need to go back to the big screen, unfortunately, but I will walk you through all of these. Or maybe I could do it like this, actually. Perry, can you monitor the chat piece and then kind of fill me in, and I can leave the chart up here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's start pulling this apart. And let's start probably with the most important piece of all, GPA and course selection, okay? I don't think I'm going to be telling anybody information they don't already know on this, but I don't want to leave it out. If I had to add, and unfortunately we don't know how to do this poll, next time, guys, we will have it all worked out. GPA course selection. Which one do you think is most important? Do you think it's the GPA? Think in your own minds. Do you think it's your GPA ultimately, or is it the course selection? Unfortunately, I can't see how it breaks down. But while GPA is very important, course selection is so much more important. Because what schools are saying is like, well, what was available at your school and what did you take advantage of? So let's say your school offers 15 APs. Okay. So how many of those did you take? So some people think, well, I have to take at least 10 because everybody in my school has between 10 and 15. So I have to take 1 million of these. But I was on the phone today with a student, she may be on, I'm not sure, who told me that she was going to take a regular level in science and AP levels in the humanities courses. And we were talking, and I could so totally identify with her because I would have even taken an honors level in chemistry at all. And she was, I think, concerned, or maybe not, maybe she knew already, about not having AP chemistry on her transcript because it's offered at her school. And that's where we come back to talking about the story that you tell and the pieces that seem to make sense when you're presented. If everything about you screams humanities and nothing at all about you screams science, a college is not going to say, oh, well, sorry, that she could have taken AP chemistry and didn't. When you're applying to be a journalism major, when you're applying to be a history major, when you're applying to be somewhere else in sociology, okay? So when you think about course selection, if your dream is MIT engineering, you maybe should be taking AP physics, okay? Or physics advanced topics, okay? Probably regular physics, MIT is going to go, maybe not. But a lot of other schools would say, okay, we'll take a look at that. So when you're looking at course selection, we want you to focus on where are your strengths, and then challenge yourself in the areas of your strengths. Don't force yourself into a situation that you cannot handle academically. It's not good for anybody, okay? But in the area of your strengths, definitely you want to load up on the highest level that you feel comfortable in. And the question always comes up, well, if I take honors, I know I'll get an A, but if I take AP, I might get a B. If I take regular, I know I'll get an A. If I take honors, I know I can get, regular, I'll get an A. Honors, I'm probably going to get a B. So what a college will say at that point is challenge yourself, push yourself a little bit. Okay, we're not telling you to go from regular to AP, but yes, you could get the A, but if you can push it, work a little harder, let's go for the honors level, even if you do get the B, okay? And that's a question that if anybody individually has that you want to talk to us about, you now know how to get in touch with us, okay? All right, so that's GPA and course selection. You can only be judged on what your school offers. Right? So if your school doesn't offer a huge number of advanced classes, it can't be held against you. So I don't ever want anybody to worry about that. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the other, elephant in the room, testing, test scores, okay? And for those of you who are currently going to be juniors, you know that for the next year, all schools are test optional. For the following year, probably a lot of them will remain test optional. So the question becomes, well, what exactly is test optional? And there are also a lot of schools out there that have been test optional for years. And so the guidelines for that I'm going to give you is that when you have an option to submit a score, you want to focus on what scores fall in the top 25% of the school range, not the top 50%, the middle 50% rather. Middle 50% is for all kinds of other situations, okay? Special situations. You want to see, do you fall in the top 25%? If you do, in one and or both, if you're applying engineering and it's in English and not in math, then I wouldn't send scores, okay? But that's another thing that we want you to talk to us about, because everybody's individual depending on the school you're applying to. And we want to give you the best possible advice. But right now, the overall advice is, if you do have an option and you're not in the top 25%, force them to look at the rest of who you are. Don't give them a reason to go, oh, that score is so far below our usual student, and then not read the rest of your application, okay? So that's test scores. Will tests always be around? We don't know. Nobody knows at this point, okay? So should you be preparing? Yeah, you probably should be preparing. If in fact it never plays a role, then if you were in my classes, you gained academic skill and that was a good thing anyway, okay? But you probably should be thinking that schools might be looking at them. And the other thing is, when you do apply, you're putting your best foot forward, right? And so you want them to see every positive piece of your profile. So if you have very high scores, you would want to show that, okay? So that's how we determine should you or shouldn't you take the test, and should you or shouldn't you send your scores, okay? So we'll go around, I guess we'll go over that side. So recommendations. So you might be thinking, what do you want out of my life? I'm in 8th grade, I'm in 9th grade. Why are you talking to me about recommendations, okay? So recommendations are a little tricky depending on the school that you go to. If you are a student in a relatively small district, your teachers do get to know you. If you're in out here in LA with us and you're sitting with 45 kids in a classroom and every teacher has 5 classes, so every teacher is dealing with 300 some odd kids, it's pretty hard to get to know your students, okay? But if you have an opportunity to get to know your teachers, whether it's 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade, to have that teacher be able to write a very personal recommendation of who you are as a student, you want that. So how does that happen? Those are relationships you start to build when you go back to school in September. Who knows if you're going back to school in September or whenever you do, okay? And again, that we will work individually with you on how do you create those kind of relationships so that when the time comes to write that recommendation, that teacher sits up straight and goes, wow, this is one of the best students I've ever had. Not best because maybe you have the highest average, okay? Not that kind of best, but just in terms of involvement and engagement and interest and all those pieces and willingness to help others and collaborate and all that, okay? So if anybody is unsure how to go about doing that, we're going to be there to help you on that, okay?
I'll just add to that, Barb.
Yeah, what?
No, I'm just going to add, guys, with the recommendations, it's a kind of thing where a cookie cutter recommendation won't hurt you. Like I said, like Barbara said, you know, colleges are aware if you went to a school with 500 kids in a class or, you know, or 800 kids in a class, they're aware of that. So it's not necessarily going to hurt you, but it can definitely help you. And so fostering those relationships, you have to think about recommendations as when I'm a college admissions officer and I'm looking at a stack of whatever it is, 50 or 100 kids, 95% of those recommendations are going to be cookie cutter recommendations. Sarah works really hard, right? She is one of the most brilliant students. And like, they know what that sounds like. But when that authentic recommendation comes across, that's where an admissions officer lights up and says, ooh, this is a different kid. And so you guys fostering those relationships, you know, making sure when a teacher offers help after school or after class or whatever it is that you're in there and you're engaging with the teacher, that you're talking in class, you know, these are the sort of things that gets a teacher or a counselor to write that incredible recommendation. The other thing is that when you guys do arrive at late junior year, your college counselors are going to ask you to fill out what they call a brag sheet at a lot of schools, where you sort of fill out everything that you do. And then the counselor sits there and says, you know, Johnny plays soccer. He loves to cook. And they're just sort of filling in off the brag sheet. And again, those come across as very cookie cutter. But if you could start to find a way into those counselors' offices, knowing that they're overworked and overburdened with a ton of students, but if you can get in there early, asking just quick sort of one-off questions, you know, hey, what do you think of this school? Or what do you think of this major? Fostering that relationship early, that's how you can really start to get that authentic recommendation that's going to set you apart from a lot of your peers.
Okay, so let me go around the chart here and we'll see if we're going to come. We're going to leave the 2 big ones for the end here. Awards, honors, and competitions. All right, so we don't want you to get too concerned that, because I had a question come in about this, like, what if I don't have any awards or honors? You know, to be honest with you, most people don't have awards and honors. You know, the percentage of kids who present with awards and honors is really tiny. The percent who actually placed in competitions, it's really tiny. And so I don't want anybody thinking, oh my God, I've never gotten an award, and does that mean I'm not going to go and get into a school? Okay, so let's put that out of your minds. However, on the competitions, on our site, if you come onto our site, we have a section for competitions. So if you're interested, you know, I love debate, I love photography, I love visual arts, I love history, I love academic challenges, okay? You can participate in regional, national, local competitions. And that shows another element of oh, wow, that person must really be interested in this particular area. So if you have an area of specific expertise or interest, then get in touch with us and we'll guide you to find these competitions to get involved in. And that you don't have to place, you don't have to come first place, second place, third place. That you made the effort to get involved in it would be showing a college a very important aspect of who you are, okay? Summer essay. Essay short answers, we're not going to really deal with a whole lot today because that's really more for much later. Summer experience, community service, extracurriculars, leadership. Okay. So
I just say real quick about the essay. We're not going to really talk about the how to go about the essay at all here, but I do want to just add about it that the essay really is for your college application, the way that you get to tell that captivating story about yourself and the story that lets a college get to know you and lets a college understand how you are going to be an added value to their community on their campus. And so even though we're not going to talk about it today, a lot of the other pieces of this pie that Barbara's talking about are all sort of, in a way, in service of that eventual essay and that eventual, obviously, entire application. But by strategizing in each of these categories, you're building that story that you're going to be able to tell come senior year when you do write that essay. And so we always want to be thinking about, you know, what's the potential story we are going to tell about this student come grade 12. So that's all we'll say about the essay. We can, if anyone has questions about the essay, we can talk about it offline, but there you go.
All right, so common application this year added a question, and it will be staying on for a while. And it's a 250-word essay that basically is saying, so what did you do during COVID? Essentially that. Because colleges know that you all have been home for months. You're probably going to be home for a lot more months. They're curious to know, so what did you do? Like, what did you take advantage of? You now had all this time at home. What did you do to enrich your own life or someone else's life? Did it affect you personally? And if so, how? You know, did it affect your whole way of viewing the world? Did it change ideas that you once had about something? I can tell you just personally, I don't think I've really ever thought about it before that when doctors, nurses, cleaning staff, support staff in a hospital, that when they go into work every day, they put their lives on the line. I don't really think I ever thought of it that way. You know, I thought they were all heroes and they do amazing work, but I never thought of it as, oh my God, these people are risking their lives every day. And COVID is not the first time that these people have encountered, for example, a contagious disease, right? They're around contagious diseases every single day. And so I have a new level of heartbreak and respect for people who work in those fields. And for people who work in other service industries, who are essential workers, who are affected every single day of their lives, not just now during COVID. So that would make a very kind of emotional and sensitive essay if I were to write that essay. So this is what they're looking for. So what did you think and what did you do? And so it's really important that if any of the students who are out there, and you guys who are in my SAT class, we're going to take some time, you know, before and after class to talk about these things, about what are some things you could be doing now so that when you're asked that question, you actually have an answer, okay? And that's a really important piece of what's happening now. And now since we're in summer, that ties into summer because we all know that you can't really go anywhere, right? You can't really do anything. Someone had asked the question, because it would be relevant in future years, you know, how do colleges look at the pay-to-play summer programs? Meaning the summer pre-college programs or going abroad to do, say, community service. And colleges are very suspect when the only way to get there was to pay, okay? Because we all know that not everybody can pay $10,000 to spend 4 weeks at a university on campus in the summertime. So they're looking for meaningful summer experiences. They're looking for, did you manage to get a scholarship to go to one of these programs, right? That would show that you took the effort to try to get there, because you couldn't get there if you didn't have a scholarship. But what are other meaningful summer activities that you can engage in now when you are at home? And summer becomes really important. Did you go on Coursera and sign up to take some classes in things that in a million years you never would have thought to study, just to enrich your own lives? Did you figure out some way to do a fabulous activity from home, locked in your house? That's what they're going to look for. And I am known to have a rather creative side. So for any of you who are stumped on, well, what can I do? You know how to get in touch with me. I will figure out something for you to do. Community service and extracurriculars. So extracurriculars right now is an issue, right? Because you're not in school. You're not going to be back in school probably in September. Maybe you will be. And extracurriculars will be greatly limited. Sports certainly will be limited. So let's just pretend that everything's fine and we're back to normal. When you're going and choosing extracurriculars, we want you to follow passions. It would be so cool to get in that club, okay? Not, I think that if I go into Model UN, it'll look really good on my application, all right? And so we can, certainly help you find ways to reach those passions and find the clubs at your school. And if one doesn't exist, how can you start one? So you can truly be doing the things that you love, okay? And extracurriculars are very important. And a lot of people say, well, what about leadership, okay? So, well, there can only be one president. There can only be one treasurer, the one secretary for a club, right? And yet a club can have 50 members or more or whatever. So are there other ways that you can show leadership? Of course there are. Head up a committee. Come up with ideas to do things that they had never done before. Offer to go around to the younger students and teach them about the activity in your club. There are ways you can show leadership that don't involve being elected to an office, okay? And again, we're here to help you figure those ways out, okay? Community service, okay. So community service, let's go back to where I began talking about Harvard and talking about making caring common, turning the tide. So we, I think, can all pretty much agree we have a pretty crummy world right now. And caring is not exactly a prominent trait of many people in this country, unfortunately. Well, actually, I think it is a prominent trait of many people, but unfortunately, the voices of the other side kind of drag. And so colleges are saying, how did you show you cared? How did you show that you're really a member of society, of a community, of a world outside of your own narrow self? And show us what you've done to go out of your comfort zone to make a difference in the world. And so I don't know if Ria is on here. And Ria, if you're here and I use your name, it's because I adore you. So Ria Bembe, student who's going to be a senior, came onto our platform as a freshman. And I read through her profile and I noticed that according to her profile, she was really into reading and writing. And I saw that she was shelving books at the library. And so I texted her, and I have all our original texts. We can communicate in text on our app, and our original text. And I said, you need to call me tonight. So she calls me up and I said, really, shelving books? Is that all you can do? And, let's figure out, you love reading so much. Okay. And so over the next year, I helped her to develop an idea that she ran with that will blow your mind. So I'm going to give you her website, her blog site. And she developed a blog called Need for Read. And Perry, can you put it in the chat? NEED, the number 4, read, READ, .weebly.com. And it is a blog where she gives reviews of books that she reads. Okay, that would be that other teenagers might enjoy knowing about. And then she did a poll around school, and she has kids who gave her their favorite books and the genres, and that's listed up there also. And then she opened it up to guest contributors, and so we have a whole section there now on guest contributors. And she took this, and I distributed this blog to teachers out here in California, in schools where we're trying to encourage reading. And we have the students reading this blog and getting excited about books, and then we're trying to get them donated. Ria's getting them donated on the East Coast, so that they can read these wonderful books that she and the guest contributors are reviewing. And then she took it further and developed a project that blew my mind of what she did for her Gold Award, for her Girl Scout Gold Award, for which I'm her advisor. And all this happened because I saw she was interested in reading, okay? So when she goes to tell a story for a college, and she could send them to the website, and she could send them to the blog rather. And she just now, and some of you may have seen it, it's been up on Peeps, and I know that she's distributed it to a lot of people. I've put it up on Princeton Education Network's Facebook page. She's looking for guest contributors, and if you contribute, you get community service credits from our company, all right? Because these are all being distributed to underserved districts along with the books. And so you will be helping reach out for a love of reading to students who otherwise may not have access. So I know that was a long story, and I know I talk a lot, but I really wanted to tell you the story of Ria, and some of you who are online know her. And this all happened because she was interested in reading, and she was shelving books at a library. So you can turn, if you tell me something you're passionate about, I will turn you into a project, okay? I'll come up with something. And yeah, so community service, and there are things that you could be doing at home, never leaving your home. We have actually a whole section on our app of activities that you could do just staying home. You never have to leave your house, which now you can't leave your house, okay? And so we think it's of utmost importance to get you involved. To get involved, some of the schools who are on here do have mandatory community service requirements. And, but they're usually 20, 30, 40 hours. Schools look at the 600 hours, the 700 hours. You know, if you're in ninth or 10th grade, you can accumulate that. If you're in 11th, you can start to accumulate a lot more hours than the 20 or the 30. So that piece is what brings you kind of like soaring kind of up to the front, because you can't rely on getting the recommendations if none of your teachers really know you that well and they're overwhelmed. And if your counselors are overburdened. But by what you're doing and showing what you do, that's going to bring you a lot of attention at the table. Yeah. And when you're presented at that table, whether it's next year or 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years from now, when you're presented at that table, there's usually about 10, 15 people around the table. And your rep goes, so, let me tell you about Ria. Oh, she's a really nice student. She's got great grades, really sweet girl. Versus, I need to tell you about this kid, Ria. Wait till you hear the things that she's done, okay? That's what you want to happen when you're presented at the table for whatever school it is, wherever in the country it is. That's how you want people to present you, okay? So,
a little bit about community service, guys. So a couple of things. Number one, we hear it all the time. Like, can I do one of these programs where I go to Costa Rica and build houses? These are horrible ideas. I mean, they're amazing. I don't poo-poo them. You can, everybody needs help all over the world. But the view of colleges really is, surely there's some problems somewhere near your home. And another way to think about it is there's actually a famous school out here in Los Angeles, and literally 85% of the school does this one activity, basically, this one camp that is a community service scenario. And it's a 1-week program, and they get a ton of hours. They get like 114 hours or something for the week. And so by the end of 4 years, they've accumulated like 450 some odd hours, and kids think that looks amazing. However, colleges really love commitment. Okay, so when you go and you do 1 week of community service, their response is, so wait, you just didn't care about the world for 51 other weeks, right? So when you think about your community service, you want to think about it more in terms of commitment over time. So an hour or two per week actually looks way better than doing 114 hours in 1 week. So that's number one. No big money stuff, and then also no trying to avoid the popular stuff. That same camp that I was talking about, I was just last week talking with an admissions officer at Cornell, and I was saying, oh, you know, this one school, whatever, and he just immediately interrupted with the name of the camp. Oh, let me guess, camp whatever. And I said, oh, wow, like that's so telling. It's like they hear it from everyone. We're trying to distinguish ourselves when you guys are applying to college. So you don't want to be one of 85% of the school doing the same exact thing. So that's a big thing. And then the last thing I'll tell you with community service is a little bit about what Barbara said, is by starting early. You know, if you are on this call and you're in 8th, 9th, or 10th grade, you know, if you have an hour or two a week, call it 2 hours a week, and you do it for 40, 50 weeks a year, by the time you get to senior year, whereas the average college applicant is turning in under 40 cumulative hours of community service for their 4 entire years, you might be turning in 400 and 500 hours. And that's the kind of thing that turns the head of an admissions officer and gets them to say, wow, this is a different kid.
Okay, I want to hit on some of the questions here, if you kind of allow me to do that here. A few people asked about things that happened before high school. Does it matter? Well, if it happened and nothing ever happens after that, no. So someone asked about getting a black belt, for example, in karate, right? So if you never again do karate, then no, that doesn't matter. But if you had that black belt and now you put out word in your neighborhood for people who have young children who might want to learn some black belt moves, and you can Zoom teach a couple of these moves to little kids, now you're doing something with your 8th grade black belt in karate, okay? Or you continue in participating, right? So in terms of stuff from 8th grade, yeah, if you continue it, it has relevance. If it stopped, it one and done, then it's looked on with a little suspect. Standardized testing, a question did come in about that. So in the standardized test section, what types of tests is it considering? So look, right now we know SAT, ACT, of course. And do schools care which you take? Absolutely not at all, okay? Up to 2005, definitely. Ever since 2005, not at all, okay? So not to worry about that. What's going to happen with SAT subject tests? We don't know. We're waiting to hear. Things happen every day. We get notified. Not looking, they're test blind, meaning they won't look at the test. They will consider them as another piece. So if you scored very high on an SAT subject test, you might want to consider taking the test, and if you score high, submitting. Just a key thing for you to know about SAT subject tests, scoring high means top 10%, which means 790 or 800. Okay, just kind of warning up front about what is a high score on a subject test and what would they want to see. I just want to see if any other, so somebody had said, you know, I have no idea how to begin to be authentic. Okay, so a lot of us don't. A lot of us are still trying to figure out who we are, right? But that's where sometimes talking to someone who can ask the right questions to find who you are will help, okay? not settling for one word yes and no answers, right? That's where we certainly have a strength, and we'll be there to help you out for sure. But let's see, how does Boy Scouts, Eagle, so yeah, listen, Eagle Scout and Gold Award, huge. Colleges know what kind of effort you have to put in for that. It is exhausting, it is time consuming, and it has to have a goal to better humankind in some fashion, okay? And so highly valued, highly, highly valued, all right? You have to go through an intense process to be approved. It's a lot of years of time and effort, and schools know it. We had another question come in on athletics, okay? And actually a few come in on athletics, with people being concerned that they had sent ahead of time. People being concerned about, I'm straight academics, I'm STEM, like, should I stop doing the athletics? Not if you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, if you begrudge waking up and running, then don't, okay? But if it's a release for you, if it's a relaxation for you, if you simply like it, no, don't give it up. The way that colleges look at things, like Eagle Scout and Girl Scouts, and like sports, they are incredibly time consuming. So how is it you maintain these grades and all these activities, and you're doing sports? You obviously have managed to create life balance, okay? And if you've created this life balance in high school, you're gonna have life balance in college. And you're gonna have outlets of creativity and outlets of activity. And you're going to be a happy camper on my campus, and you're going to do well, all right? So, and that brings up one other thing here. And this might be unique to West Windsor, so if you're not from West Windsor, bear with me here. I am asked at least 50 times a year, if not more, from students, should I give up orchestra so I can double science? So I guess I have an answer that probably is going to get me into a whole lot of trouble. But my excuse for that is I'm like really old and I'm allowed to say things how I really feel. Do you love being in the orchestra? Do you love it? Does it give you immense pleasure? Then stay in the orchestra. Don't give it up because you could double on science because you think that's what will get you into college, all right? When colleges see that you were in orchestra for 3 years and then dropped it, they're like, why? Why did you drop it? You know, if you hated it, I get it, all right? But yeah, so again, please consult with us before you do something like drop something to double on science. Doubling on science isn't what's getting you into college, okay? I probably have.
There's a question here about how do colleges look at internships, and given COVID-19, what are some other alternatives? So I'll just answer part of that, and Barbara can take over. But look, internships, jobs, whatever your summer experience is great. They're all great. However, it's really important that it plays into your story, right? So if you are, to use off of Barbara's example, if you're into the orchestra and you're a big music person, and that's sort of what your story tells, if you suddenly are doing an internship at like a big investment bank because, one of your parents was able to get you that internship, but you're not really a math person, you didn't get to a high level in math, it's going to be really hard to sell that as a really important part of your story. However, if you got a internship at Rock Nation, right, which is Jay-Z's big company, and that makes sense with your story because you're a music person, right? So in terms of internships, they look, as long as it's a part of your story and it makes sense, they look at it really positively. But don't do it just because you think it's going to look good, because if nothing else about your application says anything to do with that internship, that's a wasted opportunity for you to utilize your time, your free time, your limited free time.
But that being said, one of the things that came up in our seminar the other day, and I think Andy brought it up, Perry, he used to be an admissions officer at Princeton. He said, when they have a student come in who worked at Starbucks or the Gap or McDonald's, right? Schools love that because now you're an employee. So you had to have a boss. You had to have other people to work with. You had to show up. You had to be on time. You had to do your job, right? And that there are so many lessons you learn in those situations. If you were a camp counselor, you have the well-being of kids in your hands 8-10 hours a day. Schools love that, okay? So if you have a chance to be a camp counselor, or you have a chance to clean tables at a restaurant, or you have a chance to do an internship at Morgan Stanley where your father's best friend works, go for the cleaning the tables, okay? Just as, you know, kind of an idea. This summer, you can't go anywhere, right? And so if anybody wants to come up with cool ideas, if they want help, call me about what you can do using Zoom to create internships and jobs for yourselves, okay? I will help you. We give internships, unpaid, sorry guys, to our students all the time. We have so much work that we need to be done for our company, and you get internship hours, and if it's work that goes for our, we have a nonprofit, if it goes for that, you also get community service hours. So there are very interesting ways that you can find things to do over the summer. You don't have to have some prestigious internship. That being said, if you are a pre-med kind of thinker and you have a chance to be on a research team up at Robert Wood or here out in LA at UCLA or something like that, yes, you do take advantage of those opportunities. If your world is all about finance and you're head of the business club at school and you've been in business competitions and you are killing it in the stock club and you can work at Morgan Stanley, that makes sense, okay? So when you're considering something to do, again, we will guide you, hopefully in the right path, on the right path for that.
Another question is, how do colleges look at 3 years of a language versus 2 years and an AP? If I understand that correctly, I think you're saying 2 years, no more language after that, but the course you replace it with is an AP. I think that's what you're saying. Colleges really value a foreign language. So obviously every circumstance is a little bit different. So I don't want to say this definitively for the person who asked this question, but generally speaking, if you get that 3rd year or even preferably that 4th year, that's preferable on the foreign language front. There was another question.
I want to go back to the language one because that actually happened this week with a student who had asked me, she may be on, if you are, hi, asked me about getting a recommendation. She's a rising senior, so she won't be on today, from her Spanish teacher. And she is a finance, CS, STEM side of the world. And I said, well, if the rest of your story screams international finance, international business, global health, then a recommendation from a foreign language teacher won't hurt you. But if there's nothing about you that screams, I want to connect to 27 Spanish-speaking countries in the world, then maybe a recommendation from a Spanish teacher doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe you should have a recommendation from your math teacher or something like that, or econ if it's offered, if you're into finance. So why did I just mention that? Don't remember. Building story being relevant.
While you're thinking about it, there's another great question here, which is, do colleges limit the number of admissions from a single school? And how do colleges normalize grades across different schools? A great question.
Okay.
So I'll let Barbara handle most of it, but I will tell you this. It's not that they limit it from one school. So could you have 10 kids get into Harvard? You could technically have that. But generally speaking right now, in this day and age with the competitive schools, they're not going to be taking more than a few kids. And you will likely not see from your school, if you look at it historically over the last 10, 12 years, you're not going to see much of a variation in terms of the number of acceptances into a super competitive school. Every now and then there is a competitive school that just has an affinity for a particular high school, and you'll see a sort of abnormally high number of acceptances into that school compared to, say, some peer high schools around your town. However, in this day and age, it's a good question. They are effectively limiting the number to just a few kids from each school. So that part of this whole equation is, you're not just competing nationwide in 50 states, and you're not just competing in your state, but in a lot of senses, you're competing in your school. And so things can be very competitive that way.
So I'm going to throw out a question. Kids, I want you to answer this in the chat, okay? How many high schools do you think there are, private, parochial, and public, okay? How many high schools do you think there are in America? Just put your answers in the chat.
And while she's doing that, I just see an interesting question. Would you recommend taking STEM courses over language humanities if that would more fit your story, i.e. only doing 2 years of a language to double up on CS science courses? I'll never forget a conversation we had with the admissions officer at MIT, the head director of admissions. And we said, we have this amazing kid, and he's 800 on everything STEM and, across the SAT subject tests and whatever. And he's only got like a 500 on his reading. He's like, great, tell him to apply, right? Because for schools like an MIT or a Harvey Mudd or a Caltech or whatnot, those are, those schools, that's what they care about, right? Like they are heavy, Georgia Tech, they're heavy on the STEM stuff. So if that's your goal, I would say, sure, you can reduce it down. If you're going to be applying to the more broad general schools, your Ivy Leagues, et cetera, then I would maybe caution against that. Okay. Maybe double up over the summer.
So we have some outrageous answers here. Some are a little bit higher than it actually is. Okay, so the number's 39,000, guys. 39,000. You know what that means? 39,000 first in your class. Number ones, right? So when you have a school, let's go back to Penn. They accepted last year 3,400 students. There's 39,000 high schools. How many number ones wouldn't have gotten in if they applied one from every school? So that's kind of a reality of where admissions is. And so if I remember about 5 years ago, I think 5 years, West Windsor Plainsboro had 125 early apps to MIT. How many would eventually get in? 1, 2, right? So as Perry said, you're in competition with the other students in your own school, and that colleges are trying to spread the wealth. Okay, if you can fill an entire college from, we graduate 800 kids from West Windsor every year. We could fill half the class of all the Ivies. I mean, you can't, that doesn't represent the world. And so the colleges today are trying to, let's put our toes in the water of a school that we've never had a student from. Let's spread it out. And we certainly are going to spread it out over 39,000 schools. We can't concentrate on schools that are so-called ranked top 100 in the country. So that's the reality of that piece, which actually brings up a thing, and this is more relevant for the kids now who are juniors than maybe for 8th graders. But I'm going to throw another question out. How many universities are there in the United States? So put your answers up. Universities and colleges, for your institutions. How many do you think there are? Don't Google it.
While people are guessing, someone wrote, can you go over how applying to college from a public school versus is different from a private school? If you apply and you go to a private school, are you more likely to get in versus if you attend a public? The answer is absolutely not. I think in the old days when I was applying to college, it was definitely the case. A lot of the private schools were getting 10 and 15 kids apiece into the Ivy Leagues, you know, and the top competitive schools. Nowadays, there's very little difference. In fact, last year we got a kid into Harvard who we helped him make this very difficult decision. He actually left a very impressive high school out here called Harvard Westlake. He transferred to a public school, and then he got into Harvard. Is that the reason he got into Harvard? I don't know, but a lot of times what happens in those private schools, the competition is also really stiff. And because the counselors are well-versed in, or I should say well-connected with the admissions officers at all these schools, if you're not one of their favorites, it's going to be very difficult to get in. So just to answer your question, it's no longer a benefit to have gone to private versus public. These colleges have done a really good job of analyzing you within the context of where you went to school. If you went to a school with one counselor that had for 1,000 kids, they know that, they understand that. If you don't get an amazing counselor rec, they're not going to hold it against you. If you went to a super fancy private school and you didn't get the amazing counselor rec, they will hold it against you, because that shows, you know, how did you not get to know your counselor over the course of 4 years when that counselor only was dealing with 30 kids? So they will judge you in the context of your situation. All right, so go. Number of colleges.
So just quick before we go into how many colleges there are, getting involved in a school play or school musical is like being in sports. All right, you all know you're not coming home before 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night a few weeks before that play goes on, right? So these are all, again, things that just look super favorable for you in a college's eye, that, you know, especially if you have no real interest professionally in dramatic arts or in musicals, right? Or in going into performing arts, but you love it enough to get involved in it just for love, okay? So it does hold a lot of weight. Okay, so interesting guesses in around how many colleges. Roughly there's about 4,000, okay? And so interestingly, I'm gonna give you a story of a student. I ran into at WAC last summer. And I said, oh my God, so where did you end up going to school? And so he said, University of Toledo. I went, whoa, University of Toledo. Oh, interesting. He had applied to all the 7-year programs, 7 and 8 year combined BSMD programs, got into every single one. So you know, it's kind of, you try not to be judgmental, like, you know, like you don't want to put Toledo down, but where's Toledo? It's in Ohio. Where's Ohio? I don't know, somewhere in the middle of the country, right? So I said, I knew about Toledo. I wanted to hear why he decided to go. So he told me he got a full scholarship, 8 years, full scholarship. That's worth what, Perry? I don't know, holds so much money. Like 8 years times $600,000. Okay, that he will not be in debt for when he graduates. This is incredible. And they have a program that has you working in hospitals from the first day you set your foot on campus, kind of like Case Western does that as well. And he just found that this was going to place him in such a better position for what he wants to do in the world of medicine, and chose to go to University of Toledo. We love to do this. All right, so it's another poll for, I wish we had someone who's going to teach us how to do a poll. We're going to be great the next time around. All right, guys, if you've answered, and you can actually do thumbs up, you know, you can do the thumbs up emoji. If you've heard of Full Sail University, can you give me a thumbs up? Full Sail University. How come I don't see any thumbs up? Not one. Perry, you see any thumbs up?
I don't see
One.
any.
Seth, you know about it. Okay. All right. Other than Seth, nobody. Okay. So here you go, guys. So you got into Full Sail, and you also got into Harvard. What do you choose? Okay. For those of you who have your cameras on, how many of you would choose Harvard? One hand. Guys, put on your cameras. Come on, got to play the game.
Most of you would choose Harvard.
Most of you would choose Harvard, right? But what if your dream was to work in Pixar or DreamWorks or Disney? What's the fourth one, Perry? I can't think of it.
Well, just a video game production company.
Video game production. What if that was your life goal? That's what you want to do. You want to design. That's where you want to work for the rest of your life. You would be a fool to go to Harvard, because 80% of those positions are recruited out of Full Sail University in Florida. Okay. So why are we telling you this? Or how about Arizona State University? Give me a thumbs up if you would put that in your, if you're in STEM, thumbs up if that's in your first top 5 choices. Okay, I know we have STEM people on here. So Arizona State University, anybody? Not one. So let me tell you about Arizona State University, okay? So Arizona State University decided that they were going to go to the top competitive and advanced universities in STEM in the country and steal their professors by offering them a whole lot more money than they were getting at the universities where they were. And they built a staff at Arizona State University that would knock your socks off, okay? They have more money being invested into the STEM fields than combined MIT and Carnegie Mellon combined. Every freshman dorm has a fully staffed and equipped maker lab, right? Now, think about Arizona State University, right?
They're just rated the #1 school in the country for entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking, you know, it'd be really cool to work at a startup when I graduate college, this is now a school that you have to have on your list because the opportunity's there. Barbara always loves to say, follow the money. They are spending so much money on their STEM programs that the opportunity for you to grow in STEM there is becoming really extraordinary.
So when we look at colleges, and for some of you, this will be relevant for this year, for others, upcoming years, we want everybody to expand their thoughts and opportunities and find out where these amazing special programs are. That's what we do. We know where these special programs are. You know, just don't get locked into kind of a one path. So we know we've kept you for a really long time. We can go on and on forever. Perry and I can both talk anybody under the table. But we hope that we hit most of the questions. If we didn't hit your question, please contact us. Okay, Perry, can you?
We'll stay on and keep talking for a little bit more, but we just want to give you obviously the opportunity to get off if you are. But there are a few more questions that have been asked, so we'll definitely stay on and answer those.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Barbara. You can give them the sort of.
And then we will send a follow-up to everybody to give you, some of you, I did attach our brochure for AKALA onto the registration, some I didn't. But if you're interested in our program, it's incredibly cost effective. What it would end up costing for an entire year is what you would pay for an hour and a half of our private time. And it's been our passion to develop this program so we can bring this level of expertise and knowledge and one-on-one kind of care to the masses. So if you're interested in learning more about that, let us know, and we're happy. What we might do, and we'll send you an email, you're not obligated, of course, to attend, but what we might do is another Zoom that gives you a tour of what we're talking about, what the site looks like, and how students engage in it, and why it could be of value to you. And we'll let you know when we're going to do that. And that will be a Zoom where I'm just going to share my screen with you and show you what it is that we do.
Just so you know what, like in terms of what that product is, it's really just in addition to obviously having access to us anytime you have a question, but it's a place for you to really get organized with all of these pieces. There's a lot going on, as you saw today, in the college admissions process. There's 8 pieces of that college pie. They're all really important. They all have a lot of nuance to them. And a lot of the platform that we built is really built so that you can stay organized with all of those pieces. And that by the time you get to senior year, we always love to say we're really on a mission to end one question, right? There's one question, and kudos to all of you who are on this call, because you're getting ahead of the curve now. But when we get a grade 12 student coming to us and we start saying things like, what was your community service? What was your summer experience? What, et cetera. The number one question we hear is, why didn't anyone tell me this information? Like, I wish I would have known in 9th grade. That would have been a lot easier for me and I could have done something about it. And so we're on a mission to end that question. We want you guys to be able to arrive at grade 12 knowing that, hey, it's super competitive. It's really hard to get into these schools, but I have put the best foot forward that I can put in as a candidate. And that's all you can really ask for, right? Is that you just don't want to sit there with a little bit of regret saying, God, I wish someone would have told me that. I could have been such a stronger candidate. And so that's really the core mission of our company is a lot of this, because counselors are overloaded in the schools, it's very hard to get you guys this sort of nuanced guidance. I just saw a question go by here that said, if writing is the passion, then what do colleges expect out of that, right? And well, the answer is a lot of potential answers, but you want to be able to get that kind of guidance. Well, what if you are a writer? Well, the answer is, you got to be doing things that expand your writing, whether that's writing courses over the summer or starting a blog, or I see you said writing a book on Wattpad. I mean, if you can write a book, that's great too, right? So things that sort of develop your writing, joining the school newspaper, there's like a whole number of things that you can do to improve your writing. And ultimately the goal of this platform is to be able to let you tell that cohesive story from start to finish that says, this is me. And that schools look at it and go, wow, that's a great story. We want that kid on our campus, right? And that's the goal. And I'll leave you with also one other thing that I wanted to say. And then there were some questions that we didn't get to, which I'll get to in a second for those who want to stay on. But one of the things in the COVID-19 world, that was the title of this talk, right, is like college admissions in the age of Corona. Colleges more than ever, this has been an insanely stressful time for everyone. You guys have obviously all experienced it on the high school level. It's similarly happening on the college level. And kids are stressed, teachers are stressed, everybody's stressed. And one of the most important things that you can do by the time you get to senior year is try and get across this idea of compassion and empathy, and that you are someone who's going to bring those key qualities to community, right? To the college community, or in that case, the college campus. That's going to be so critical come grade 12. And right now, in the age of Corona, right, who knows how long this is going to last? Today, 35 states have gone up in their numbers, right? So we are still in Corona. So it's not too late to start something, whatever that something is. And again, that's going to be unique to you and your goals and your personality. But it's not too late to start something now that says, this is what I did during Corona. And that could be something huge. You started a website, you started a tutoring company, whatever. Or it could be, you know what, my neighbor is elderly and she's high risk for Corona. And so what I did was I offered to do the shopping for her, and I wiped down all of her things with Clorox wipes before I leave it on her front porch, right? That's just as important. And it shows empathy and it shows compassion. And these are the kinds of things that schools are going to be looking for in a few years. They want to know, like, who said, you know what, I'm going to step up and help my community during this very difficult time. And how you get creative with that, again, we're happy to help, but like, you want to get creative with that. Obviously a lot of us are stuck at home. It's not so easy to just go out and get something done, but There are a lot of things you can do, and therefore you should do them.
So, Perry, there's a bunch of questions from when people signed up that I definitely want to get to.
Yeah.
So, let me just, we talked about tests, we talked about APs and all that.
I see a great question. If tests are optional, are they still helpful? Will this year's GPA count?
We touched on that.
Well, I just want to talk about the testing. I may have been jotting down questions when you talked about this, but I just want to make sure it was touched upon. You know, tests are optional. When they are optional, they do mean that. However, if you can go and get that great score, you should. And that is a very simple sort of declarative statement. Like, if you can go get that great score, go get that great score. It's really, it can help schools. Believe me, all of these schools are begrudgingly going test optional this year, right? They're not actually excited about that fact. They're aware that they're going to get an influx of potential candidates that probably they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So, yeah, we love to say optional means required, especially on college essays. But even with the SAT, the answer is if you can go get a great score, you should.
Okay, so just a couple of questions that are a bit sensitive, and I want to address them because it came up in a lot of questions. What does an admission officer look for from an Asian American student? Is it different depending on the ethnic group? And there are a few, do colleges have higher expectations and requirements for Asian students? Wow, loaded questions, guys. On the surface, I think the easiest way to explain it is that you will be judged based on what your school offers and who the other candidates from your school are. So if you happen to be at a school with a very large Asian population, you're in competition with them. So it's really no different. How do you distinguish yourself from the pack, so to speak? Okay. It's not that you have a leg up or leg down because you're Asian or not Asian. It's that you're in competition with everybody else in your school. And how do you become the student? They're not going to take 15 students from a school. So how do you become the one or the first or the second that they take? And at that point, it doesn't have anything to do with your ethnicity. I know there's been a lot of publicity about that, and we know about the lawsuit at Harvard this year. It's just not in reality what is actually happening. In reality, what's actually happening is that there are certain high schools that have clusters of certain ethnic groups. And so the competition from that group in that high school is huge. So it looks like there's a lot of backlash against Asians. No, they're just not in those schools taking 50 kids from a school. So I think you should all rest assured that your ethnicity doesn't help you nor hurt you. Ultimately, they're looking for that diverse community, and you know, if that day they're looking for another female Chinese mathematician from New Jersey, Central Jersey, that's your lucky day, you know. But because again, they're filling out the spokes on the wheel. So I know it seems like there's implicit bias here in terms of against one for another. There actually is not. And hopefully this year, we're hoping, we're going to see a turn in this whole admissions process where ultimately the admitted class reflects the full United States. This is what we're hoping for. And we think we've got a good shot at it because we think there's been wake-up calls in this country that have been a long time coming. So I wouldn't worry. I'd worry about the amount of competition from my own school, you know, and I think, like, why did you move to Princeton? Why didn't you go to South Dakota? Nothing against South Dakota. Okay. Anyway, so
A great question here from Carlton. Thank you for that. Have you ever advised students to attend community college and then transfer because that makes sense financially? And then at the end of the day, does it really matter what school you go to because you can be successful no matter where you go? That is perhaps the most important message we like to send. I always like to tell people, unless you follow college football, I'm going to name a school for you. And I'm going to guarantee you that either one of two things. One, you've never heard of it. But two, if you have heard of it, you don't know where it is. And you could throw it in the chat. No Google cheating, please. Who here's heard of Auburn University? And if you have, can you throw in the chat where you think it is? But be honest, don't Google.
While you're all answering that, please put down a book that you might want to read, written by Frank Bruni, called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. Okay, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. And it is a great book exactly on this topic. Relevant reading absolutely for everyone. For those of you who are not familiar with Frank Bruni, he's a New York Times columnist. He's the one who 2 years ago wrote the headline, Stanford Admit Rate 0%. And it was a satire on the situation with Stanford because we know that their admit rate is basically non-existent. And so the big headline was Stanford Admit Rate 0%. And people were like, oh my God, it's kind of like for those of you who are online now from West Windsor and Plainsboro, it's like what happened with War of the Worlds when Orson Welles talked about the Martians landing in Grover's Mill. And, people came out with guns and they started shooting at that house at the end of Clarksville Road. For those of you who live there, you know what I'm talking about. So people were like calling Stanford and how is your admit rate 0%? And yeah, so.
Anyway, but so most of you got it wrong. Visha, congratulations. You got it right. Alabama. Abby, you get a half point since you guessed Louisiana first. But it's in Alabama, okay? And what I love to tell people is, look, most of you have never heard of it. Most of you don't know where it is. But had you gone there, or if you go there, you too can become the CEO of the biggest company in the world, which is called Apple, right? And so Tim Cook went to Auburn University. So Carlton, to your point, that is point well taken. We love that. Where
right,
you
the other half of this question, because I wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, so I wanted to talk about this concept of transferring. So
about community college?
Yeah, so
wait, let me take this because I have such a jaded answer here. So when I moved out to California and I started to run into students whose pathway was to go to Santa Monica Community College and then UCLA or USC. And I was like, community college? Like, who does that, right? Because when you're from New Jersey, you hear about kids going to community college, but it's not a very common thing. And now that I've been here for 10 years, I'm like, oh my God, community colleges are amazing. They are absolutely amazing. They offer opportunities at a fraction of a cost to explore majors, explore courses, get your core courses done, set you up to kind of grow up, and set you on a path that you may not have ever had. And so I've totally changed my whole view of what community colleges are. And to tell you a very personal story, you have to be careful I don't really reveal who it is. Perry had a very dear friend in high school, a little older than he was. And this kid was just the most lovable person in the school, class clown, the whole thing. But I think he had like a 2.0 GPA. And so he went to Mercer County Community College. And when it was his second year of Mercer County, he wanted to go to four-year school. So not only was he admitted to Boston College with all his credits, but he graduated with honors. And today, I can't tell you the position he has because you'll know then who it is, has a huge position in a company in this country. And he just needed the 2 years to straighten out and figure out what he wanted to do with his life. So yes, community colleges are an amazing tool If you're not ready and you don't know and you want options, or $80,000 a year is a lot of money and maybe you don't have that money and you may not get the scholarship. So to answer that question about community colleges.
Well, also with community colleges, you can be very strategic with community colleges, and this depends on where you are, and you got to do a little bit of research. But like, for example, the school that Barbara referred to, SMC out here in Los Angeles, a number of the community colleges out here, SMC, Pasadena City College, Long Beach College, Community College, these schools all have direct pathways to UCLA and to USC. Those are both two top 25 schools. And I tell kids all the time, I say, listen to me, never once have I ever heard anyone ask, well, did you go to that school for all 4 years? So if you want to use that community college to then, if they have relationships with a big state school or a private college, as they do out here, that could be a really strategic move for you to get that degree, if that degree from a fancier name, so to speak, matters to you. So yeah, Carlton, to answer your question, that we highly recommend looking at that option. Another option that is great is the gap year. Barbara touched on that a little bit earlier. You know, don't poo-poo the gap year. Colleges love gap year kids. And the programs are amazing out there today. So if you go and do a gap year, colleges love that because oftentimes you've learned to live on your own already. You've learned to handle your own money. You've learned to manage your own money. And colleges love that because they don't have to deal with you learning that as a freshman. So that could be really helpful. And also from a strategic place, the gap year allows you to apply to colleges twice. So you can apply to colleges in your senior year, see how you do. If you're not happy with your results, you could take the gap year and then reapply. So that's another interesting strategy that you can use in addition to the community college strategy in terms of landing in the fancier name, if that is important to you. And wait, I saw another question here that was a good one. If you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat.
While you're looking there, a question came up that someone had sent in before about a major. Do you have, what if you don't know what you want to major in? So I'll tell you when I was in high school, if you would ask me what I want to do, I would tell you, I don't know, I definitely want to go to college, okay? Maybe I want to be a nurse and I want to marry a doctor. Swear to God, that was my answer, okay? I can't stand the sight of blood. I certainly didn't marry a doctor. And at a rather advanced stage, co-founded a tech company. So do you have to know your major when you go into college? Absolutely not. I would love it if the adults on would put in the chat if they knew in high school, in 9th grade, 10th grade, what they wanted to do for the rest of their lives, and are they doing that thing that they defined at that time? Okay, I think that would be really that's for a whole other Zoom for adults only. Like, are any of us really doing what we thought we'd be doing when we were in 9th or 10th grade? And I would imagine very few of us are. So no, you don't have to know your major. There are certain fields that if you live and breathe architecture and all you want to do is build houses, sure, be sure you take the courses in high school that fit that and then apply for an architecture program. Although Perry's best friend out here in LA is an incredibly successful architect and didn't get interested in it until after college. So you just never know. An old girlfriend of Perry's was an English major. She decided a couple of years post-college, she really wanted to be a doctor. And so she went back and she took courses, pre-med courses, ended up at Columbia for med school, and the rest is history. So no, you don't have to know now. If you do, that's great, follow your passion, but certainly you don't have to define it at this time in your life.
Someone just asked a great question. Suggestions on timeline to take the SAT or AP test, the earlier the better. Well, Barbara, you can take this one.
Okay, so So if you're my student, you know that I want you to take the October test, never the August. The August test as a junior is not released to the public, nor will the September test this year be released to the public. So all you get is a number. But let's count how many times the SAT is offered, okay? So we'll start with October, which is when I would like my students to start. So we have October, November, December, March, May, June, August, October. We don't know if it'll be September next year. 8 times under normal circumstances before early decision. This year, November, 9 times before early decision. Do you seriously want to take this test 9 times? You know, so I like when my kids take October because we get the test back, we get to see it. We don't see it again till March. We see it again in May. And I like everyone to take October because you get to see the test, you get to analyze your mistakes and know where you failed. Usually what happens is, oh my God, that's the answer I put, what was I thinking, okay? Or it informs you about where you have to put a little extra work in.
Barb, just a quick thing. For those of you not familiar, if you're on the younger side, what Barbara is saying is actually really important. The SAT releases the test 3 times a year. Okay, it's October, May, and I don't know what they.
March and May.
March and May. So those tests are really valuable because you actually get the physical booklet back and you get to see how you did.
You don't get the physical booklet anymore, it's online.
Yeah, you get the online book.
Yeah,
but you get to physically see how you did, whereas if you took the December test, you just get a score and that's it. So if you are looking to take these tests, whenever you're looking really, but especially if you're on the earlier side and you're in sort of like that October of your junior year, or if you want to take it in the fall of your junior year, October is really the one to gun for if you can, because you actually get to see it. That's a really important thing from a strategy standpoint.
And then in terms of how many times should you take the test, and I'm asked this so often. And again, I can only speak for my students and the way I work. We have a pretty good idea by the time you take this test of what you're capable of getting. And should you get that score or near it, maybe you try it one more time. If you're below where you should be, and we would know that, if you've worked with me, I know that, then we encourage you to take it and to retake it. Oftentimes, if you feel you could do a little bit better, we say, you know what? October senior year, you have nothing to lose. Go in, take it again. You've grown up a lot, you're more mature, you're now applying to college, you see things a little differently. Why don't you go back and give it another shot, okay? I don't know that I've had students ever take it more than 3 times. Typically, it's kind of like October, May or June, and then October the following year. You know, that's a very individual discussion. If you have individual questions about when you should take it, when are you ready, when aren't you ready? If you're not ready for October, you and I will discuss it. And I'll say, nah, let's hold off. Let's not rush. The other thing is, and I have to use West Windsor always as the examples because that's where I worked for so many years. Somehow either prom or orchestra performances are the night before SATs. And I remember one year, the orchestra was performing at Carnegie Hall and the SATs were the next day. And all my students showed up for the SATs the next day. And I was like, what were you thinking? Like, you got home at 1 o'clock in the morning. You're so on adrenaline. You just played at Carnegie Hall. Now you're waking up 5-6 hours later and you're going in and taking this test. Like, seriously, what were you thinking? So we want to look at your schedules. You know, if you're in the spring play, why are you taking a March test? You're up till 11, 12 o'clock at night. If you're building sets, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, you're building sets. What are you going to take? And the next morning, you're showing up to take the test. So we want to look at everybody as an individual. What does your year look like? If you're a soccer player and you play regional and local soccer, why are you taking the test in November? You know, you're traveling all over the country kicking a ball. What are you thinking? So that's a very individual question. Anybody can call me at any time and I will give you the advice on that. Any other good questions? Any back? Oh, someone asked me about, someone put a question. I wasn't sure what she meant. I don't know if she's still on. Sarah, I think, about private school counselors having favorites. Oh, Abby. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question 100%. But do counselors have favorites? Oh, God, that's such a sensitive question. I would like to say no. Absolutely
The answer
not.
is yes.
What?
The answer, you'd like to say no, but the answer is yes.
But the answer is maybe yes. Counselors, private counselors cannot do this, so don't ask me to do it. But school counselors can pick up the phone and they can call a university and say, you know, we've got this amazing student. We really want you to take a really close look, okay? If you have a particularly close relationship with a particular school and particular counselors, you have a lot of influence. On our panel the other night, one of our counselors who was on, one of our head of counseling at a school, literally can pick up the phone and say, you know, to any number of schools, you got to take this kid, okay? Do counselors have favorites? Like Perry said, I'd like to tell you no, but maybe I have to tell you yes. So how do you get around that? Become that counselor's favorite. Be that amazing student, that wonderful, bake cookies, okay? There's not a counselor you can't get to with fresh cookies, okay? Be that considerate counselor. Talk to that counselor. Don't just tell the counselor about you. Ask the counselor. You know, tell me about you. Where did you go to school? What was your experience like? How did you end up doing what you're doing today? Did you ever have an idea to do something else? You know, get to know your counselor. Show that you're interested in your counselor, right? That's how you become a favorite of a counselor. And that's where you might have an edge if a counselor gets to promote one or two students from a school. But again, it has to be from the heart. You can't just pretend to do.
There's a great question on that was asked prior about, you know, what about big school versus small school? You know, we won't get too deep into that, but what I do want to tell you guys is now, starting in freshman year is a great, you know, 8th grade, 10th grade, whatever it is, a great time. If you're a junior, get on it really now. But it's a great time to start exploring schools. There is no right answer to that question, right? I went to Williams College, okay? Williams College has 2,000 kids. It's a small school. I bleed purple and gold. I loved it so much. But I had a student who I thought should go to a Williams College, and he said, no, I want to go to UT Austin, 55,000 kids. And I was like, no, that's a terrible idea. That's not for you at all. And he said, that's what I want. And he did. And I texted him just the other day because I just wanted to say hi. He loves this school so much. It was the right fit for him. He knew it when he visited the campus. So to answer that question of big and small, the answer is you know, obviously talk to people like us. Let us help you understand the key differences between those schools. And then you have to make that sort of personal decision. Obviously at the big schools, it's a lot less personal, a lot less intimate. Oftentimes your name is just a simple number, but there's some amazing things about these schools, like access to tens of millions of dollars in research funding and, you know, going to big football games or whatever the case may be. So there's tons of advantages and disadvantages to going to each, and it's a really personal decision. But I will tell you, start to get involved now. One of the things that I think is a great tip for all those of you still on the call, you're going to get the tip. The people who left, sadly, will not. We'll send out the thing. They have to make it all the way to the end. But start now to create your own email. Your professional email. My Gmail account is perrykalmus@gmail. It is not, you know, horses are awesome 17@gmail, right? Or we've heard a lot worse and a lot more inappropriate, right? So start your professional email, okay? The one that's your name and something very nice and professional. And what you want to start doing is signing up. Go to the schools that today you think would be great, okay? And this can change 25 times. You may say, you know what, I only want to go to big state schools like UT Austin. And so you go to UT Austin and Ohio State and the UC system, et cetera. And then you decide, you know what, senior year, you want to go to Williams. That's fine. But for now, pick the schools that you think interest you, the ones who have the great programs in the interest area where you are interested, and start to sign up for their newsletters that will all go to this new email. You can even create a folder that diverts that all of the college email to your, to a specific folder. One of the big things in college admissions when you get to it later on is, right now it's all about building your profile, but if you're thinking really strategically and far ahead, it's all about what's called demonstrated interest. And colleges have ways to know whether or not you're interested. So obviously the best way is to show up for a tour. Now, there's a few juniors on the call here. That's not going to probably be possible this year. So you're going to have to do a virtual tour. But the more contact you have, they can even trace in those emails if you clicked on the links that they sent. So when, Princeton University sends out, hey, we got this new professor that won this huge, won a Nobel Prize in whatever, click on the article link. Scroll down and make it look like you read it, and then X out if you need to. But this is what's going to start to build your demonstrated interest. They might sit there and go, wow, this kid has been following us for 3 years. They must really want to be at our school. So that is a insider tip for you, and one that I highly recommend doing. And we could talk, if you do ever want to get involved with us, we can talk about other ways that you could show demonstrated interest over the course of your time. A few other questions have come in. Let's see here. No, colleges do not look, or Ivies do not look negatively on West Windsor. They love West Windsor, but they're only going to take so many kids. So, sadly with West Windsor, it may appear that way because there's so many qualified kids, that are all overqualified for a lot of these schools, and they're only taking a few. But no, they do not. They love West Windsor. They love West. Let's see some other questions. Oh, how do we visit schools physically? Yeah. Right now, you're going to have to do these virtual tours from that demonstrated interest standpoint. You can sign up for those virtual tours. So that would count as being, having registered for it. And that's really your only option right now. I will say, if you are in driving distance, you're around this summer, obviously the campus will be empty, but go check out campuses, walk around, see what the feel is for you. Obviously it's going to be a little bit different because kids are not there, but does that campus look like a place you want to be? My brother is driving cross country right now, and it just stopped at the University of Kentucky today. This is late breaking news. My brother would never have gone to University of Kentucky. He wrote, man, I hate this campus, right? But one of my best friends went to University of Kentucky and loved it. So, go and get on those campuses and see what you feel.
Yeah, someone asked a question that about, you often choose a place to live based on the high school. And so do colleges take, preference to certain high schools? So Perry gave you an example before, but we also had 2 additional students who were in very posh private schools out here in California, in addition to the one he told you about, who transferred to a school here called Venice High School. And Venice High School has, 4,000 kids, and dropout rate from high school is 50%. And tough place to be. And they both transferred there 1 year after the other. Second one who ended up at Harvard, and the other ended up at Stanford, because they stood out as such amazing students in these schools. And as I said, colleges are looking to say, we've never had a student from Venice High School. Let's take a student from Venice High School. So I think what's important about, in terms of where you chose to live for your high school, has a lot to do with what the experiences of the kids in that high school. I mean, I can only speak to West Windsor because my kids all went through the system there. But, I thank God every day that I ended up in West Windsor and my kids got to go to those schools. I think it helped mold them into the amazing students that they became. And so, I think that you don't think in terms of, will this high school get me into such and such college? Because we've already gone over the fact that there are 4,000 colleges and there are amazing places out there. And, everybody kind of ends up okay in the end. And so, so they don't have a preference of high school one over another. Some they know better, which makes it a little easier to look at the students, but it doesn't mean any more students will get in from that school than in any other particular school.
Another
and
great-
just a quick comment about when Perry's talking about size of school. When Perry opted to go to Williams, his sister, who's a year behind him, said, "Are you crazy? That's smaller than High School South. I would be caught dead in a place so small." And she ended up at University of Miami. And in terms of feel, when his other brother was looking at schools, we were doing the Pennsylvania schools. We drove onto a campus of one school, I'll name it because it is a great school, it just wasn't for him, was Lehigh. And he said, "I'm not getting out of the car." I'm like, "What do you mean you're not getting out of the car?" He goes, "I hate this. I hate the place. I don't like the way it feels." We drove over to Lafayette, and that was it. It's the only place I want to go. So you do want to visit places if possible, okay? But if not possible, as Perry said, take the virtual tours. I'm going to add something to what Perry said to you about the virtual tours. There are general tours that the schools are doing, and then they have all kinds of other tours they're doing with students, with a particular professor or a particular department. Do them all. Because one, if you're a junior, the clicks are going to count, okay? And they probably will continue to count for the future years. But more important, you get to see more of the kids and the life and get the feel of, would I be happy at this particular place, okay? Any other questions come in?
Yeah, one came in, a great question. How important is freshman GPA? The answer to that question is colleges are willing to forgive a couple mistakes, especially we're talking about like the super competitive colleges. They're willing to forgive a couple of mistakes in the freshman year. I mean, generally this sort of upward trend is really important for colleges to see. But that said, so the answer is if you didn't do well your freshman year, you can still make it up. But obviously, if you're in 8th grade right now and you're going into freshman year, as few of those mistakes as possible. Again, when you're thinking about that Yale example and they're trying to reject, or they have to sadly reject 6,700 kids who they want to accept, sometimes they're just looking for like any hole at that point. But sophomore, junior, and senior year definitely way more important than freshman year to answer that question. And then another question came in, for geographic diversity, are they looking at where you live or where you attend school?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, the answer is both. I mean, I have a student last year who lived in New Orleans, lived in West Virginia, went to school in a boarding school in New Orleans. That's an interesting story that a college admissions officer is not going to see very often. So they're going to take both into account. I mean, they're taking into account everything and then trying to make a decision on you as a student. And so if they think you're going to bring an interesting perspective to that community, that could be something that's beneficial to you. I see another question. My school only offers AP Physics, so I don't have a choice to choose other physics. Is the AP exam important if I take an AP class? Go ahead, Bart.
So yeah, all right. So it depends. Don't you love that when people say it depends? It does. It does depend. Are you applying to Caltech and MIT and Carnegie Mellon for their engineering programs? then you need the AP exam. Are you applying to be a journalism major at Syracuse? No, you don't need the AP exam. Okay. So if you're forced into taking an AP level class because no other level is available, but it has absolutely nothing to do to round out your story, then you won't be penalized if you don't take the exam. You 100% would be penalized if that directly connects to what you say that you want to major in. Okay. Now, that being said, if you do well in the course and it's not your area necessarily of interest, but you do very well, why not just take the test and see what happens? You're not obligated to report it. It's not an obligation. Okay. So I hope that answered that. Any other questions coming?
Let's see.
Oh, social media. Oh my God. We should have done that when everybody was on.
Very important.
Oh my God. Yes. Colleges are monitoring social media. There was a situation a few weeks ago, some of you may have read about it, a student who was supposed to be starting Cornell University in the fall, admitted to play football there, put something on a social media post, highly inappropriate. It was brought to the attention of the school. He was from a very posh private school in North Jersey, very, very posh. The football team dropped him, and we don't know yet about the general admission. We assume it's going to be pulled. So clean up your social media accounts. There is a company, and we have to check them out a little more. It's called Social Assurity. Okay. And they will help you clean up messy social media. You know, you think that nobody saw that TikTok? Somebody saw it. You think the Instagram live wasn't viewed? Trust me, it was viewed. Schools today are very sensitive to social media. Nobody wants to be that school that has discovered, admitted someone who is a horrible person and who has horrible beliefs about other people. So yeah, so clean up your social media accounts. Every single thing you post, every picture you post, every picture that someone takes of you and posts becomes something for a university to focus on that could prevent you from getting into a school. It's very, very serious. Okay.
Yeah, guys, we are all familiar with this cancel culture, right? The cancel culture is you get one strike, right? There's not two strikes, not three strikes, one strike and you're out. And so, please, my begging is like, get off of those sites. Don't risk, I know that's where all your friends are, or you could be on the sites, but just don't post. It's just too risky right now that, God forbid something gets interpreted the wrong way. It's one strike. And then all of a sudden an acceptance can be rescinded, and we just don't want you guys to go through that.
I think what's even more important than that, like if you're having the kinds of thoughts that would get you rejected from a school, work on yourself and get rid of those thoughts. Don't have those thoughts, so don't just like, I'm not going to post because I don't want someone to see who I really am. Just don't be that person anymore. Work on yourself.
All right. I think that about rounds it out. Let me just look real quick.
Yeah, if anybody has any personal issue that you want to contact us, you have our emails. Perry, can you put our phone numbers up?
Yeah, I'll put my...
Call us. Anybody, I probably should have announced at the beginning, if anybody has juniors who are not yet registered for SAT classes, get in touch with me. We're running classes all summer. I keep adding sections when the classes are full, so I just added a new one today. So let me know if you need any help on that part of the world. I'll also put that in follow-up email.
Someone asked, can you name the company that cleaned up the social media?
Social Assurity.
Social Assurity. I don't know if I'm spelling this right, but something like that. I just put it in the chat. I put our website in the chat. Oh, and our phone numbers.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can feel free to. I put our emails in earlier. I'll put it in right now. Also, and then I'll put Barbara's in.
Yeah, the other thing, and again, I'll put this in an email that goes out if I remember to do it. Stay away from sites online like College Confidential. When you have a question specific to a university, call the university. Go on the university's website, okay? You'll oftentimes ask me a question, and I'm going to send you right there, okay? There are just things that change on a daily basis that only the answer can only come from within the admissions people at that school, okay? That's just another tip. Stay off those general advice sites.
And just to give, oh shoot, I was giving someone, I did not put it in the chat to everyone. Sorry, thank you for letting me know that. Sorry, I'm pasting it again. There's all the emails and phone numbers. Does the ACT release tests like the SAT? They do release tests, but not in the same sort of way. So
December, June, April.
Yeah.
Different months.
So anyway, but I was gonna say, how is the pandemic changing college admissions? The answer is, I do think we'll revert back to, SAT is going to be really important and GPA is going to be really important. I think those are all going to be really important, but these other components of the application are now rising in importance. So your extracurriculars, your community service, your summer experience, how you show compassion and empathy, that's how you want to think about as you strategize going forward. We're always happy to help you. And like I said, if you have any questions, we have our emails and phone numbers in the chat. Happy to discuss. And we wish you guys all the best. Someone just said, sorry, for a computer engineering course, do you recommend ACT or SAT? No, either one is good. And then yes, someone just asked, can we share this recording? We'll definitely share this recording. But good luck to everyone. Take the strategy and the strategizing seriously. It gives you the best chance at being the best applicant that you can be. And we're always happy to help along the way. And thanks for coming on.
And we'll stay on until everybody leaves. So if anybody,
we'll wait until everyone leaves, but feel free to ask questions if you have them.
we're going to just hang out here.
Hey, I had posted a question and it was not answered.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Go ahead. You want to ask it now? I may have missed it. Apologies.
yeah, sure. So, like my son does a sport which is not part of the school system, but he's like very much involved into it. So, can all his summer activities be around that? And how do I actually like quantify like the time or whatever spent on the sport and the achievement achieved in the sports, like when I do a college application, when I like put it in front of them on paper, how do I like show that?
Sure. So it absolutely counts. What is the sport, by the way?
He plays cricket.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
Okay. So all right. So I can tell you on our app, for example, when students are listing their activities, they check off in school, out of school. And so that when they are taking that information and putting it onto the application, they can specify exactly where it took place and how many hours. If you're on our app, there's a place where they register their hours every single week so that at the end of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long you're on the app for, you have a complete record and you just transfer it onto your application. If you are not coming onto our app, you just keep those records, keep a notebook, keep a spreadsheet. Every week, go in there every Sunday night and add the hours in. And they hold as much weight as any other activity in school. Absolutely.
Yeah, and something like cricket is you know, it's not obviously a popular American sport. Therefore, it can be a very advantageous activity to have on your application. We actually had an awesome student who was a big cricket player. He got an amazing President's Scholarship to Tulane. So yeah, try and keep developing that cricket, and you know, if there's opportunities for him to engage in it in interesting places around the world. This kid that I'm thinking about was playing all over Pakistan. So you could definitely.
Yeah, so my son has spent like most like last 2 years, he spent his summers in England playing cricket. So so my thing is like, how do I put that all into like an application? So does it come into the essay part, or does it like come into like the questions, the short answers?
Depends. Yeah, I mean,
I think that that one of the questions that will be reappearing on applications over the next few years, again because of all the craziness that we're going through, is describe what your favorite activity was. It used to be a mandatory question on the Common App. A lot of colleges picked it up and they're putting it on themselves. So you do, if they have that type of a question, you get the opportunity to speak about it at that point. If there is a relevance to the activity, to your life, that has affected you so deeply, it could become a main essay. So there will be plenty of occasions to deal with it.
Okay.
And it'll be individual universities. What you probably will want to do, what year is your son in?
He's going into 10th grade.
Going into 10th, okay. So he probably wants to track, do any colleges in the States have, well, we know about Tulane, but like, do other colleges have actual cricket teams? Because if that is the case, what becomes really important, and again, this is something we didn't talk about NCAA, but if he's thinking in terms of, wow, I would love to go to this school and they have a cricket team, then you go onto the school's website, and you go to athletics, and in the athletics section, you go to potential athletes, potential recruits, and you fill out a profile. You can fill it out as a 9th grader, it doesn't matter. Once you fill out that profile, you can then speak to the athletic team on campus. If you don't fill out the profile and you call up and say, oh, Coach so-and-so, I'd love to come to talk to you, and they're going, who are you? Okay, so you fill out the profile with all the information they ask you, and at that point, you're on their radar. So if he's in a tournament, for example, that's going to be somewhat competitive, you dash off an email to all these coaches, BCC them so they don't, or not, this way they know they're a competition for you, right? And you say, just want to let you know I'm going to be at a tournament in Albany next week. My jersey number is 72, and you stay in constant contact with the coaches in that fashion, okay? So if that's something that he thinks he might be interested in pursuing, either just because he loves it for college or as a means to go to a college, then those are steps you must take, to set him up for that.
Someone just asked
Sure.
about where you can find.
Sure, thank you.
No problem. Someone just asked about where you can find the Common App questions. That's just on Common App's website. I'll put the link in here.
No, if you just Google Common App Questions 2020, it's right up there. It'll come up first thing.
Yeah. It's commonapp.org. But I'll paste that
You may
right
have to
there.
search for the COVID question. You may want to type in, Common App COVID question 2020 if you want to see the details of how to write that.
Abby, I don't know if you're still on. You had said to address your repeating question. I missed it, and the chat is so long. So if you can maybe repaste that or unmute yourself.
Yeah, everybody, if you have questions and just want to talk, just unmute yourselves at this point. So we just have one page of you left.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, no, I was just wondering, if your child repeats 9th grade.
No problem.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Absolutely no problem.
how
Oh,
come
wait,
up. She's
wait,
a
sorry.
year young. All the schools kind of encourage her. I'm not quite sure why, but she got really like she's a student. So,
Wait, Abby, sorry.
oops.
I think there was a bad connection. It was hard to hear you. Would you mind repeating?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah. No, I was saying that my daughter is going to a boarding school, but they some of the schools encouraged her to repeat the year again. I mean, she was a year, or she is a year younger than her grade, but she's also a straight A student. So I'm wondering this ninth grade year in West Windsor will kind of what happens to that? What happens to all those straight A's, and how do we explain? That's something I'm going to bring up to the school also, but I just wanted to hear your take on that too.
What school is she looking at that you're thinking of
Oh, it's Mercersburg in Pennsylvania, and she's already got there. Actually, she's already got in.
you know what, can you give me a call on that one and we'll talk about it?
Okay.
You have-
Okay.
Yeah. Did you get
I'll put her number again in the chat.
yeah,
Okay. We'll do.
that offline.
Okay, that's yeah, and there were a number of others who suggested that too. So it was that this just happens to the one she's going to.
Yeah,
So
no
it
one's
was like a common.
clear. No one's going to hold it against you for repeating a year. So
But I'd like to discuss it with you because you did say she was a straight A student. So Leah, if you can give
Yeah.
me a call, either, well, it's already late on New Jersey side. It's early here in LA.
Oh, okay. Are you in LA?
Yeah, we're in LA.
Oh, okay. Okay.
just to be, it just makes me think of an interesting thing for those who are still on and listening. There is a section of the Common Application for extra information. These are things where you can explain anything, why you got a bad grade in a class, or what something happened in school, an incident, you stayed back a year. There's a number of different ways that you can explain away something like that. And so Barbara will talk to you offline, but just for people in general, there is a place to explain any sort of abnormality or anything else that's interesting about you. It's called the extra information section. And it's
Right.
very valuable in the Common Application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Give me a call
So
sometime tomorrow.
I'll follow up tomorrow. Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Anybody else want to talk to us?
I have like one more question. Like, I'm the same person who talked about the cricket. And so like with this, like the other question I was just thinking, so about like repeating grades. So like we've been thinking about sending my son to like India or somewhere. So where it's a cricket playing nation. So we want him to develop in the game. But it's also like we didn't want his studies to be like spoiled. So we've been like on a kind of, weighing it in and putting it. So putting like his studies in the front and sports to the second. So how would it affect, like, I mean, like now with this year doing online and everything, so I know there are a lot of virtual schools around US too. So how would it look on his high school record if he has like an online of 1 year and then back to school and all that?
Well, you know, online programs have just exploded in this country. One of the most famous ones is Stanford High School Online. It is extremely competitive to get into it. And the online programs that are of that level are looked upon with the highest regard by universities. Students opt for online high schools for a variety of reasons. Out here in LA, we have a ton of online programs because they're in the acting world and they can't go to a traditional high school. It's like homeschooling, right? You know, years ago, people were afraid to homeschool their kids because, well, how will universities look at it? And universities love homeschooled kids. So, you know, so I think you have to evaluate his goals. If you said, look, he wants to be a professional cricket player. He wants to play on the team in India or in England, right? Well, then you have to evaluate it in that light. You know, Perry will tell you the story of his choosing between University of Virginia and Williams. He was admitted into University of Virginia, and he would have been able to play soccer there. And at the time, it was the #1 ranked soccer university in the States. And you would have gone there if your intention was ultimately to play professional soccer. And he'll tell you I forced him to go to Williams. Trust me, I didn't. I let him make his own choice. But you know, if his goal had been to be a professional soccer player, then it would have been more important for him to go to University of Virginia than to Williams. So I think that's a decision that you guys have to sit and consider. Is his goal to get a few years of professional playing in? If so, then a decision has to be made in that realm, I think. So I think that's something you have to consider. You know, is this something that's just a hobby and it's great and you'll play it, you know, for as long as you possibly can? Or do you have a dream of playing on an actual team before you enter in a professional field of some other kind? So yeah, I'm happy if you want to, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well.
Sure. I'll try to catch up with you offline.
Definitely. Anybody else? We're still here. Martin, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I had a kind of personal question. So if you have I don't know if you can call it a discrepancy, but if you have like a discrepancy in your GPA, could you explain that in the extra info section of your Common App? Because for me, what happened was I had something happen freshman year and I ended up getting 2 Bs, but since then I've only gotten Bs.
So here's the deal. It depends on like what happened. Okay. And don't tell us here. You can tell me that in person, you know, what happened, you know, these happen in everybody's life and that, you know, their grades sometimes suffer, but is it a story that needs to be told or not? So I would have to know a lot of details about that to tell you, do you address it or don't you?
I think it cut out. She said, or at least she wrote, I don't know if she just said it, but she actually tore her ACL her freshman year. So the answer to that is yes, you can easily write that in and sort of explain what happened and you couldn't walk and you were in a knee brace and, you know, all this stuff. And colleges are sympathetic to that kind of a thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If there's a health thing that happened to you that affected your performance, yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. Yeah. I didn't see that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
A great question here. Sadly, there's not an amazing answer, but how do I deal with teachers that are more biased or favor certain students, which sometimes creates an impact on my class grade? This is a tough one. You know, sadly, we've all been there, right? We've all had and encountered really tough teachers that for one reason or another, you were not their favorite. You know, the answer sadly is you just gotta push as hard as you can and get the highest grade you can. And if it reaches a level of worthy of an extra information, fine. And if not, you know, you could put that in the extra information section. If not, but just be careful. You know, this is a good example of you don't want to appear too defensive, even though you may feel like you were slighted a little bit. And so it's a tough one to do, and maybe we talk offline about that.
Yeah, I don't know who asked that. Who asked that question, Kurt?
Well, it was a private question. So.
Oh, it's a private question. Okay. So just as a word on that, one of the things that I do with my students is coach them on how to approach teachers when there's an issue. And it's tough. It is tough, especially if you feel that you're being treated unfairly in some way. But if that's something that you want some help on working through, yeah, just let us know and we'll coach you through that. We can't promise that it will make a difference. It won't hurt you, but will it change the situation? Unfortunately, maybe not. But yeah, that's definitely an offline issue, and please get in touch with us and we'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, for those still listening, Barbara hit on a great point, is like self-advocacy is a really important part of the college journey, right? Or I should say the high school journey to college. And so if you do go in there and you know, one of our biggest recommendations is get in there, ask for help, ask for tutoring, ask to meet after class, ask to do a Zoom session, whatever it takes. That's how you can oftentimes get in the good graces of a teacher and maybe reverse something like that. I see another question. If I go to a high standard school and move to a lower rated school and I'm towards the top, do colleges look at how hard your school is? Ooh, great question. You know, there's a lot of people who strategize that way. Barbara mentioned it earlier. We've had a number of students over the years who have elected to leave the very competitive district and go be a top student at a less competitive district. It's a good question. I mean, you have to maintain those grades. You got to stay motivated. Sometimes you got to make sure that it's a good social climate for you. It can help. I hate to say that, but it can help.
Well, you know what you can do? If you feel you're in a school that's a less competitive atmosphere where the courses are not as challenging, there are some amazing online opportunities for classes to supplement what you're doing in school. You know, and so maybe if you feel that you're not being challenged enough and that the courses that you're offered are not up to the speed of another school, then search online and find courses to supplement what you're doing. And that will be looked upon very favorably. Okay. You know, but make yourself stand out at that school. Go above and beyond at that school. It's like what I mentioned to you about these two girls who went to Venice High School. You know, they were such standouts that, you know, as I said, one Harvard, one Stanford. You know, so
yeah, that's actually a good way to put it. Is like you can't, you know, if you are strategizing and you want to go to that school because you think it might help you get in, it could, and it, you know, I definitely wouldn't tell you not to do that, and I might even tell you to do that, but make sure that you're not. It's not just about getting good grades at that school. As Barbara said, you got to make sure you stand out. So don't just rest on your laurels and say, oh, well, I'll be the top kid in the class at the weaker school. A student wrote, or somebody wrote, for students like vocal and theater, any good suggestions for the summer? Ooh, for this summer is going to be obviously a challenge.
Okay, so wait, is it vocal or is it theater, or both? Because if it's vocal and you have friends who are also involved, you can do Zoom concerts, okay? Oh gosh, I can't believe I never mentioned this. This is another thing I should put into the chat that I forgot. If you go on our Princeton Education Network Facebook page and you scroll all the way back to March, I posted a ton of things to do during COVID. What can you do? And I've got concerts up there. I have orchestra concerts. I have choral concerts. I have ballet, all done in this Zoom format. So if it's vocal, you can put on concerts. And what I would tell you to do, if you tell me where you live, I can tell you more precisely. But you can contact senior centers, assisted living centers, where visitors are a problem right now. And you can contact them and say that you're doing a live concert and at such and such a day, and could they put you on the TV in the rooms, and for people who would love to see a concert, they can tune in and watch you put on this concert either by yourself or with others. That's what I mean by getting creative at this juncture. How do you do things that can be incredibly creative? If you are so involved in the vocal side and you feel you might be able to teach very young children, set up a little vocal camp, okay? Put word out. If you're in West Windsor student, put it out on Peeps. A lot of students have been posting on Peeps things they're doing this summer. Offer to give voice lessons to little kids, okay? Teach them how to sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Doesn't have to be opera, right? So we can get super creative on that. On the other part, what was it, dramatic arts? Is that what it was, Perry?
Theater and vocal.
Theater. Theater online, vocal I can help you with. Theater online, interesting. I have to put my thinking cap on for that one, see if I can get creative on that side.
Yeah, someone said a similar thing for marching band and color guard. I mean, I would probably put that in the category of like, how can you take something like vocal and maybe, you know, you play the tuba or the horn or whatever you're doing in the chat, and maybe you call some elderly centers and offer to play for them. Maybe you can grab, obviously you're not gonna be able to grab the full band, but maybe you grab 3, 5, 10 of your friends and you do a socially distanced thing in a park and you record it. There's a number of ways that you can get creative to say, hey, and by the way, no one's going to hold it against you that you couldn't do marching band, right? Obviously you can't. But how you get creative with the fact that you do play an instrument or do color guard, that's something that could really help you. So nothing's going to hurt you, but it could definitely help you.
Set a chair outside your house on your front lawn, you know, and just start playing, you know, kind of at that time of day when people are kind of more coming and going or outside and taking a stroll. Just sit outside and play.
But guys, there's also, you know, there's an opportunity there to create something that, again, when we start talking about that long story about who you are, what did you do during COVID? You know, there's a chance for you to record this stuff in a, you know, in a YouTube play, somewhere that it's permanent, where you can direct a college and say, hey, during COVID, I realized music is healing, or whatever you want to say, and I decided to, you know, do a number of concerts and check them out. I recorded them. You can come watch me. So, you know, there's two options. You could just do it, but if you do it and record it, it's an opportunity for you to sort of display that on your application. Someone wrote, one more question regarding jobs and internships. I'm looking to go towards the medical field. I already have volunteer hours for working with children, mostly teaching and tutoring. However, because I barely made the cutoff, I'm a rising junior, I'm not eligible to work in the hospitals until September. Yeah, the cutoff, I think he's saying age-wise. What are some options for the summer that I can do to further my interest in medicine and sciences? Ooh, interesting.
Okay, so, all right. So unfortunately, a lot of the programs that are online programs this summer, the deadlines have already come and gone. But interestingly, the UCLA Business and Entrepreneurship Program, which has nothing to do with medicine, is still open. So I'm thinking that there may be some college programs that are still open that you can take a look into. You can go to a website, although it's not, unfortunately, they have things there that have, the deadlines already came and went, but the website is TeenLife, TEENLIFE.com. And you go into their search bar and put medical/science programs, see what comes up, and then check out and see if anybody still has registration going on. Or maybe not for July, but maybe for August. So check that out, teenlife.com. Okay, they're legit. They're, you know, we vetted them. They're on top of their game. I just don't know if places will still have things available. You could do a lot of self-study in that field right now. You could subscribe to medical journals and read medical journals. JAMA, I'm thinking Journal of the American Medical Association, where you just stay on top of the latest research. I'm sure there are other research journals in specific fields. Get subscriptions to those and read. You might find you have questions and you can write to physicians for answers who write these articles, and, you know, just kind of get creative on that end. Obviously, you can't work in any hospitals. You can't do the EMT course if you're young, but you could put it on your ideas for going forward. So yeah, I would look for either colleges that are still in spaces and courses this summer, or reading the journals. Go on Coursera, see if Coursera is offering anything in that vein. Go on, TED Talks and watch 300 TED Talks on advances in medicine and educate yourself from that. On our site, we have TED Talks for every field. And I know, and we have to limit how many we put on, because otherwise we'd have thousands on there at this point. So I know if you go into TED Talks and you put health medicine, you could sit for days and watch TED Talks on medical things. So those are just some ideas to, for while you're stuck at home that you can do. Okay.
Someone had I wrote them back, but yes, if you do get a bad grade, you can explain it in your extra information session. The key with anything in the extra information section, especially if you're explaining something that's that could potentially be viewed as a negative ding on your application, you just can't sound defensive. Like, oh, the teacher didn't like me. Well, that's not gonna play so well. So we want to make sure that you're explaining it the right way. And then I wrote back to someone else, similar with the dance thing, very similar to vocal and the band answer. Maybe you're calling old age homes and doing performances. TikTok is a big thing right now. Maybe you don't necessarily have to do these crazy TikToks. You could do really cool and thoughtful and meaningful TikToks that have to do with dance performances, and maybe you do them with underprivileged kids. I mean, there's a number of ways you could do it.
What else, guys?
Yeah, any other questions?
I have a question. I was just wondering, my son is just going into 7th grade, and I'm wondering if this was a little too early to start, or is it the right time to start thinking about, his grades and what he's doing and things like that? Like, when do you start thinking about college?
Now look, 7th grade, on the one hand, it could be considered early. On the other hand, there could be a number of strategic things you could be doing right now to start to sort of set your son on the path, right? So starting to let him explore and develop, interests, because those interests will lead to the activities that he does in high school. A lot of middle schools don't do too much of the honors stuff, depending on the school, but if your school does, the classes that he takes next year will be important. Next year in 8th grade, is next year he in 8th grade or this year?
No, next year he's in 7th grade. So I was like, yeah.
So 6th grade may be a little early, but honestly, in 7th grade, it's a good time for him to start really exploring. Like, on our site, we have a whole feature dedicated to TED Talks, and he might start learning about all these things in the world that he never knew existed, that sparks a passion for him. Most 7th graders don't necessarily have a passion yet. If he has one, great. If not, it's a great time for him to start to develop those things and put him in positions where he's either watching these TED Talks or reading, doing whatever to sort of spark those interests. And then once we're sort of allowed back out in the world, having him engage in activities that allow him to also develop those passions. So no, I don't think it's too early, but you don't have to be as methodical right now. Now you can be much more exploratory.
Yeah, and I think it's just, exploring. So it's just a great word. Introduce him to things that he never saw about. When we give out assignments to our students on our site, sometimes I'll give them an assignment and I'll say, from the categories that are listed, write back to me the one that you're least interested in, okay? And then they'll have to write to me, I have no interest in this, or I have no interest in that. And then their assignment is, they have to watch at least one TED Talk in that category, right? And then they're like, oh man, like they had no idea what was coming. But it's so important to begin to expand interest areas. So important. And just expose him to a lot. Expose him to the performing arts, the visual arts, sports, the hobbies, chess, checkers, have fun. I think that the key is just have fun exploring new things together. If you go, by the way, some of the sites may have already expired, but on our site, we have, I'm sorry, on the Princeton Education Network Facebook page, I posted things like tours of national parks all throughout America. And if those sites have expired, you could just Google it. Sit and put it up, cast it to your big TV and go on tours of national parks together. Or another one was to explore art, and there are 100,000, oh my God, I have the best activity. I'll tell you in a second. I should have told everybody about this. 100,000 paintings have been uploaded from museums in France. So go touring museums, go look at artwork. So if you go to, oh, Perry, what's the name? The Getty Project? The Getty what? Oh, man.
Getty Images is the...
No.
Estonian.
No. Okay, so the Getty Museum has a project going on. If you Google Getty Museum, you'll find it. And what you do is you go through, they have tens of thousands of images of fine art, and you choose a painting and you recreate it from things in your home. And they've had, I think, 100,000 entries already of people who have recreated the masterpieces from stuff in their homes. I have to, excuse me, I need to find the website for this. I sent it out to all of my students and I forgot what the name of it is. So much fun to do as a family. It's amazing. So it's sponsored by the Getty Museum. So if you Google it, or Perry, if you want to Google it and see if you can find it right now, it's amazing. It's just so much fun. Do stuff like that.
So when do you start sort of really thinking about college? Was that 9th grade? Is that like...
8th grade's really the time. I mean, 8th grade's the sort of the time where you're picking the classes. Actually, a question just came in. It's a good segue. Someone said, how should I decide what classes I take in high school, like different sciences and math? For now, you could get in this exploratory period where he's trying to find his passions. The second that he finds something, latch onto it. Find ways to develop that passion such that it's something that he can continue to build upon in 8th grade, in 9th grade, and all the way through high school. Knowing full well that could change 10 times, but if he does find something, you should latch onto it. Once you hit 8th grade, that planning for high school classes is really important. The answer to the question, especially if you're coming from a competitive school, is you've got to take course rigor is the #1 thing in college admission. So they want to know that you took the most rigorous course load possible for you at your school. So to answer this person's question, what classes you should take the most challenging course loads for you. If you're going to get a C, don't take that course. But if you think you can get an A or maybe a high B or whatever, take the most challenging course that you can. That's what I would say to that question. But yeah, so 8th grade is when you can start to get really strategic. And then 9th grade is really what traditionally counts. Barbara answered a great question earlier, which was someone had asked, I'm a black belt in I think karate or something, but and does that count if it happened in 8th grade? Well, it definitely counts if it happened in 8th grade and then you became a double black belt or whatever the next level is up, and then you continued to develop that, and then you started teaching kids karate, and you start to keep developing the story of karate. If you just got in 8th grade and then you never engage in karate again, then it's not something you'd put on your application. But if you develop it correctly and strategize correctly, it can be really powerful to take something all the way from 8th grade all the way through, community service being one of the biggest ones. Let's see, any recommendations for medical volunteering online? Oh, someone put in the chat getty.edu, Barb. But any recommendations for medical volunteering online for ages 14? That's a tough one. We'll have to take a look at that and see if we could find anything for you. But not that anything that comes up to mind just now, but perhaps if you took I think on the medical front, a summer course, all of the colleges are online. You could still sign up for the July, August courses and some of them. That might be your better route. Any other questions?
I'm getting the Getty thing. The Getty Art Challenge. That's what it's called. The Getty Museum Challenge. Can you put that in the thing, Perry?
Oops.
Yeah, when you just even look at the photographs online of what people did, you'll have the biggest smile coming across your faces. It's amazing.
Happy to answer any other questions if you have them.
Hi, Barbara and Perry. I think we connected at one point of time for SAT classes, but
Okay.
I have a question that's coming to my mind. We live in West Windsor, Plainsboro, and my daughter is a rising junior. As you know very well, this is a very highly competitive district, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter is quite smart. She's getting great grades and all, but unfortunately, with all of that efforts and being totally well-rounded with sports and all, she's not outstanding. And I know one of the trick, to be eligible for a good college is just that you outstand your crowd around you, right? We were considering at this point of time to either change neighborhood or, I really am getting very anxious about what's going to happen in the next 2 years. What would you recommend? To stay put and just, try our luck or just make a move?
Roma, call me offline.
Yes. Yeah,
That's
sure.
a good offline question. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that decision, and
I know.
But yeah, let's connect offline on that.
Okay, sure.
Word,
Thank you.
I should have addressed it when everybody was on before. And I know you didn't mean it, but I'm going to use it because it'll help educate other people. You said a good college. She wants to get into a good college.
Yeah, what did I say? I'm sorry.
There are no bad colleges.
Okay.
So that's what I mean. University of Toledo, in a million years, if I tried to sell that to most people in West Windsor, they'd look at me and go, what, are you crazy? And
yeah.
So, or Arizona State. So there are there are no bad colleges. None, not one, not a single one. A good college is one where you thrive, where you feel valued, where you feel that you're making a contribution, where you feel you're learning. And I'll tell you, there was a story. My younger son played soccer with a boy from West Windsor whose dad hadn't yet turned 50. I think he was like 48, and fully retired. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that possible? And so I said, where did he go to school? And someone said he went to Hofstra. Now, back in the days when he would have been at Hofstra, basically, if you would have agreed to go there, they would have paid you to come, okay? Totally no, 100% admit rate. I mean, whatever. You have a C average, you can get in. Not that way anymore, by the way, far from it. But he went to Hofstra. So I thought, how did he go to Hofstra and then end up retiring at 48 years old? So it turns out that he went to Hofstra, he graduated #1 in the class. So he took advantage of everything that was available for him at Hofstra, and then decided he wanted to get his MBA, and he happened to go to a little school called Harvard, right? Went into finance, into banking, and retired at 48. Did it hurt him to go to Hofstra? Absolutely not. Did it hurt Perry's friend to go to Mercer County Community College for 2 years and has such a huge corporate job that it would blow your mind? No. So there's no bad school, and there are many paths to success. And sometimes students end up transferring. They start in one school. Ori also had another friend, started at Rutgers, did 2 years there. Did very well and transferred to Columbia, finished his work. His original choice was Columbia, he didn't get in. He straight A's at Rutgers, got into Columbia. So there are lots of different routes that you take to get to your goals. What becomes important is define your goal and then strategize to get there. So, so we like to say that there are good colleges for you and there are bad colleges for you. Okay. So it's what's the proper, and I know it's an overused term, but what's the proper fit ultimately? Where are you going to gain the most out of being? So, so someone who's kind of having a rough time or maybe not having the grades that they had hoped and whatever, that's no problem. There's a fabulous place for that person. And, if that person can define a goal, that person will get there.
I'll throw one thing to that also is, obviously it depends on your kid and happy to talk about it offline, but if the ultimate goal is that you think a master's or a doctorate is going to be in the cards, then oftentimes it actually makes sense to not necessarily go to Harvard or Princeton in your undergrad, because what a lot of people don't realize about the rankings of schools is that if you went to Harvard, the reality is if you had a 3.6 at Harvard, it probably is maybe a stronger grade than a 3.9 at a weaker school. But when Harvard Business School is trying to accept kids, if you come at them with a 3.6 or a 3.4, even if it's from Harvard, you're now lowering their average GPA. And when you lower their average GPA, you lower their ranking. And so strategy-wise, it may make sense for you to go to a school that is not an Ivy League and do really, really, really well, and then transfer, or not transfer, and then apply for a master's program that would be at an Ivy League, right? Because that's ultimately where you want to be. So there's a lot of strategy involved, and it may be that you don't necessarily go to the fancy school undergrad, but you go to the fancy school for grad, and that's even more impressive. So
Right.
something to think about.
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
By the way, one of the best examples of that is, the Indian and Chinese communities here in the U.S. So many parents that we have engaged with went to some school in India or some school in China. Well, nobody in America is going to appreciate whether that school's the Harvard of China or the Harvard of India. No one in America is really going to have either heard of it or appreciate it. But they come here and then they get the MBA or the doctorate from a really fancy school, right? And now they have a master's from Princeton or a master's from Johns Hopkins or whatever the case may be. So there really is a lot of benefit to that strategy if you think your kid is going to head that way.
Anything else, guys? We have,
Wait, I see a question here. What are the most important things to focus on besides being outstanding? I always thought that if you had bad grades, it would affect you in college. What should I expect freshman year of high school? I'm passing the classes, like getting above 85 for an honors class, but what about GPAs? I mean, look, GPA is just long considered a very important aspect of accepting a kid into a competitive school. So the answer is you know, if you want to get into the most competitive schools, I mean, you have to, the grades, it all starts with the grade. So you're not going to get into Harvard with a 3.2 GPA. So you always want to be considering, like, how can I get the highest GPA possible and the most challenging courses possible? I don't know if that answers the question, but.
well, I think it depends on the schools you're looking at. I mean, we have to hit realism at some point, okay? And, you know, if, so Penn had, last year, 2019 was 47,000 applicants, right? They're going to they took 3,400 from 47,000. So, you know, tough if you're not outstanding on all counts. Okay. That mean if you have a bad grade, you won't get in? No. Does it mean if you have a bad grade, you will get in? No, we don't know. Okay. But sometimes you just have to look at the numbers. We know that this year, which is not the year that any of you are applying, but if you were applying this year, with the test optional situation, we know that the numbers of applicants at schools are going to skyrocket. So we're going to see schools, you know, UCLA has always been over 100,000. We're going to see other schools, you know, like a Michigan and like the Ivies that will hit 60, 70, 80,000 applications this year. Last year, NYU was 87,000. So when you start to look at numbers like that, you realize, you know, if your grades aren't the top of the top, then let's find a school where you're going to have an easier fit. It doesn't mean you don't shoot for it. If you have something else that's incredibly outstanding, if you're a rugby player, not rugby, cricket player, and the school has a cricket team, they have to field the team, then maybe a few Bs won't hurt you, but, you know, individual situation, one by one, and we're happy always to talk to you about that. Anything else? It's getting late there in the East Coast, guys. Do we have any West Coast people? I should have asked where. Oh, I did us in schools. I hope we can save the chat. I'm curious.
Someone asked a good question. No problem. Nice to see you. Someone asked a good question. How do you stand out from other students that are applying for pre-med? Here's the thing about, well, for one, if you can, well, for one, let's talk about 7-year med programs. There are these amazing things called 7-year med programs. If you're not familiar with them, definitely check them out. And getting into those programs, you've got to have done, why am I totally blanking? EMS or emergency medical services, volunteered on a ambulance. Those kinds of things can help you for sure. If you're doing those kinds of things, the reality is pre-med you could do from any school in the country. And so most schools, with the exception of obviously the 7-year med programs, most schools are not, they're not necessarily interested in, oh, wow, this kid's pre-med, because they know that X% of their school is always going to be pre-med. So the way you could separate yourself is to volunteer for EMS and to volunteer in hospitals and to do those kinds of things. But most schools are not really judging kids based on the pre-med of it all, because they know they're going to get huge numbers of pre-med kids.
Yeah, the only time that the activities you do prior to applying affect you if you're pre-med is if you're applying to the 7 or 8 year combined programs. Okay, because there the schools say, you know, we have very few spaces. Prove to me that you're not going to faint when you see blood. Okay, so those schools are looking for the kids who really are showing, like, this is my life and everything I do connects to this. Every other school in the country, if you take the courses, biology, chemistry, inorganic chemistry, all those things, you have your pre-med courses, you take your MCATs and you go to med school. So, yeah, so the only that what you do ahead of time will matter will be those 7 year programs, 7 and 8 year programs. Combined. Anything else?
Last chance.
Last chance, guys.
I mean, you could always reach out to us, but do you have any pressing questions right now?
When we started, the sun was out here in California, and even here it's going down. So it's getting late for you guys. But anybody else have anything we can help on? Answer at all? No?
Could we just like text you guys out of the blue or email you guys if we have a question?
Totally.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So,
All right. I think we can end it. Sort of going once, going twice.
anybody have anything to say? We're still here. If not, Akshay, you're quiet. Are you still on?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for this.
Hey, sweetie. See you in class. Who else is still on? Some of my students are still on. All right. Be in touch, guys. We're here for you.
All right. Let's say we end it.
We'll end it. Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm gonna hold on 2 seconds.
Wait, where are we gonna get the recording for the thing you said you were sharing it with us? So where can we get that? Are you gonna email it to us or?
Yeah, we're gonna email it out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Someone said we're gonna email out the recording. Barb, can you hit save chat there so that
Where do I do that?
in the chat, like where you go to type?
Chat, where I go to type. Second. And where do
On
I?
the right hand side, where you type on the right hand side, see those 3 dots? It says save chat.
So does it save the whole thing?
Yeah.
Sweet. Chat saved. All right, got it.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna exit out here.
All right, see you guys.